Hi, this is Ren, and this is All Walks of Film. Here we have a group discussion with our co-host Casey, our friend Loren,
Hello.
and our friend Haley.
Hey.
Lee.
So this should be a pretty interesting discussion because we have varying opinions on the film. We have everything from extremely negative to extremely positive and somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all seen this movie once, right?
I have not had a chance to rewatch it since Friday.
Right, because it's still opening weekend. Today's the Sunday of opening weekend, and I'm sure a lot of people have already seen it multiple times, but I think we've all seen it once, right?
Yes, I haven't gone back yet.
Yeah, so, I mean, making mistakes about the movie is not, oh, how could you not know? We all saw it once. Yeah.
We have not Xeroxed the film into our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like some like hardcore Star Wars nerd that has seen it every single day, multiple times.
Probably, yeah.
And as a lifelong hardcore Star Wars fan, you know Lady Bird's in theaters, right?
Yes.
Lady Bird's in theaters. Call Me by Your Name is in theaters, which I had some issues with some of the themes in that movie, but
totally.
Call Me by Your Name, Shape of Water. There's some good movies out right now.
Back up. Haley, did you just say I, Tanya's in theaters? Where is it in theaters right now?
It's at the Landmark.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
No, it is not the Landmark. It comes out of... Disaster Artist is not a good movie. Don't see that.
No.
I liked it.
I think it's the audiobook.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's not.
I think The Disaster Artist is the biggest missed opportunity of the year.
Well,
okay. I can see that.
I think a lot of people did a really good job, but I don't think James Franco holds the movie as much as he thinks he does.
Well, he can't direct it. I think his brother gives a very good performance, and that's about the only thing I really like about the film. This is, of course, a live discussion of The Disaster Artist, the film everyone's talking about right now.
Star Wars.
The newest Star Wars film is The Disaster Artist, Episode 8.
Yeah.
Well, for you it is. For me, I have my own preferred fake subtitle. We'll get to it.
Cool. Oh, I didn't even mean that as a diss. That works too. That's not true. I think the best subtitle is Episode 8, A Disturbance in the Force.
I personally quite love Star Wars Episode 8, Burning Down the House.
I think I've come to terms with my feelings for the movie the way I look at like the prequels and even some parts of the original trilogy. Like, I mean, it was a good movie to like sit through and watch and stuff, but it definitely has its flaws. Like, I'm not going to overlook that.
Well, Haley, and maybe for everyone else that hasn't, the audience doesn't know, what's all of our positions on Star Wars in general and the recent films?
I thoroughly enjoy watching them. I mean, it's great to sit down and kind of like go to a galaxy far, far away. And this new trio is great. I love all of them individually. Just filmmaking aspects. I mean, I feel like the story could be a little bit stronger.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about like the original trilogy and then the prequels and possibly expanded universe and other canons and that kind of stuff?
Well, starting with the original trilogy, I mean, that's where it all started. So of course the nostalgia is there, but they weren't perfect either. I mean, one glaring thing, because like I was just like writing down cons of this movie, is like how much Star Wars fails its side characters that are propped up to be awesome. So like you look at Boba Fett and it's just like missed opportunity. Phasma, missed opportunity. Go to the prequels. I mean, there's just like so many.
Darth Maul.
Oh my gosh, yes. Darth Maul. So
each for Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
really am still hoping he pops up in this, like, the next movie.
Yeah, like when are we gonna get Lando?
Where's Lando?
Lando is off being this probably like an old Casanova lecherous guy, probably in the corner of the casino planet. I think that's where he is.
I hope he's not on that planet.
Playing his character in this movie.
Not really.
I mean, he was like a cross between Han Solo and Lando. There was like the sleazy
Who was?
betrayal.
Who was?
The Codebreaker? I don't
know.
Benicio del Toro, the first Puerto Rican Star Wars. I loved him.
Not the master Codebreaker, but a Codebreaker. Whatever.
Yeah.
A Codebreaker. Well,
Justin Trudeau was there. Or wait, no, not Justin Trudeau.
Justin Theroux. I did like.
Thank you.
I have my issues with the Casino Planet sequence, but it did amuse me that in his one line, he's like essentially Nick and Nora from the Thin Man series. That kind of amused me.
I'm not familiar with that.
Me neither.
Oh, they're a wonderful series of movies from the 30s and 40s based on Dashiell Hammett novels about this couple that is constantly drunk and solving crimes together with their dog while ribbing each other very politely and throwing a lot of shade.
Sounds pretty fun.
They're generally delightful. There's just like 5 billion of them. I think there's 4. I don't know.
Somewhere around there.
Okay, as for me, my experience with Star Wars is I'm a general science fiction fantasy fan. When I was a little kid, I was a little late to the table of Star Wars, but I fell in love pretty hard. I still have my VHS tapes of the original cuts somewhere, and all the action figures, whatever. The prequels are, well, they are the prequels. They have been. We don't need to relitigate those. I do think of the prequels, The Phantom Menace is the best one, despite Jar Jar. It has the most. It feels the most like a Star Wars film. As the new crop of films, I enjoy The Force Awakens with some strong reservations. I think it's a very charismatic young cast, but like a lot of people complained, it is essentially Star Wars A New Hope again, a newer hope. And Star Wars Rogue One, I hate Star Wars Rogue One. I think it's about as bad as Attack of the Clones.
See, that's why we disagree so much on Last.
I love Rogue One.
I love Rogue One.
I think Last Jedi does some of the things that Rogue One tried to do and failed, but in Last Jedi they do them right, and we'll get into that.
I completely disagree, because a big part of the reason why I don't like Last Jedi is because it's doing the exact opposite of the things that I did like in Rogue One.
Well, I mean, if by that you mean that The Last Jedi has a sense of adventure and wit and charm, then absolutely.
No, I don't agree with any of that, but what I mean is, like, you're not seeing new takes on things you've already seen and seeing new kinds of characters and going through
everything there were so many new takes and new ideas in The Last Jedi. There's like 5 or 6.
I don't agree with any of that, because a big part of what I don't like in The Last Jedi is everything feels super barren. It feels like no thought was being put into like the different kinds of worlds and the different kinds of environments, other than we just need new Pokemon to sell.
All right, so
I completely disagree with that, but we'll get into it.
I know you do.
So, Casey, what is your experience with Star Wars?
Okay, well, growing up, my moms would kind of let me watch whatever I wanted unfiltered, but my dad kind of tried to give me some quality control protection. So I actually never saw the original trilogy until he was able to like sit me down with the original VHS copies. Because he was like, you're not watching this special edition nonsense first. So
That's
I probably didn't see it. I would think so. So I didn't really see it until I was older, like maybe I think I was 7 or 8. but it was the original unfiltered concept, and I saw all 3 of them in a weekend. You know, we kind of marathoned it. So I did have that sort of shock to my system with the, wait, what the fuck are these special edition rewriting of my childhood nonsense moment? And I also was at the right age where when the prequels were coming out, I was excited about it. My uncle was taking me to see The Phantom Menace. I was like, cool, it's going to be another Star Wars movie in theaters, and Darth Maul looks awesome, and double-sided lightsaber, cool.
That scene still gets me.
Dude, I still dig Darth Maul. He was a wasted character, but at least like there wasn't anything too fucked up about what they did with him. I dig him. I still dig him.
Yeah, and I heard if you watch the animated shows, he does come back, and he
does.
is expanded on, and he's a pretty compelling character in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
He also has his own comic as well.
Yeah, I saw some images of that, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I have it on my computer, just haven't gotten to it yet. See,
nice.
I want to go back to me for a second and my experience with Star Wars. So I didn't like say how I got into it. I think I was shown the original trilogy and I immediately did not like it. It wasn't until I was taken to the movies to see Phantom Menace that I started to actually kind of enjoy Star Wars. And for most of my childhood, I preferred the prequels. I apologize. That's a sin. I know.
No, it's not. Not if you like them.
Not really, because there are some things that obviously don't work in the prequels, but I think there's actually a lot to admire in the prequels. Like the art design is super, super amazing, and I think a lot of the thematic elements were good ideas. Mm-hmm. Maybe they weren't necessarily done well, but they were, good, solid concepts. And I think that a lot of the fight choreography and action scenes work well, and the music's phenomenal. Like, there are good elements to the prequel, for sure.
Shame about the actual scripts.
Well, yeah.
It was, like, after Revenge of the Sith came out, I kind of, like, Star Wars became whatever to me. Harry Potter was, like, my world. And then when Force Awakens came out, it just kind of reintroduced me to Star Wars, and I fell back in love with it. And that's like, I was like, okay, I'm going to go through the entire universe of Star Wars and learn it. So I've been reading books. I've been getting into the comics. I watched all of the show, the Clone Wars. And I'm about to start watching like the Rebel.
That's really good. I've liked what I've seen of it.
I've never gotten into the CG Clone Wars, but I was a huge fan of the Genndy Tartakovsky, the Chudi one that came out before, that I think has been for some reason buried in the Star Wars mythos. No one ever talks about those, but they're wonderful.
I wasn't a huge fan of the art style, but I did appreciate those.
I think they're incredibly well written, directed, and executed, like a lot of the things that Genndy Tartakovsky does.
I actually kind of always avoided Clone Wars because my first exposure to it was actually the comics and nothing to do with the cartoon. Yeah, I think that was maybe a erroneous first impression.
Gotcha. Ahsoka Tano, honestly, if you could stick it out like past the first episode, in like the order is completely wrong too on Netflix. I found that out. You have to go through a very specific order to watch not Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars, to make sense of it. But Ahsoka Tano, she's great.
Yeah, I made an unfortunate mistake of trying to watch a random episode, and it was an early one that focuses entirely on Jar Jar Binks.
Oh no, I noticed episode 2. That was bad.
I don't know why the showrunners of the CG Clone Wars show thought, hey, let's focus an entire episode on Jar Jar. People love him, right?
Well, the last episode they did focused on R2-D2 and C-3PO. So, like,
I mean, but people like those guys.
But it was also, and I think it was 3 episodes, and it was the series finale almost, and all they focused on was the robots.
Yeah. So, my personal background of Star Wars is I actually watched The Empire Strikes Back first.
Same.
Bad nerd.
But it was available. I tried to get the first one at the library, and then I lost my patience after waiting like 3 or 4 months because it was still coming in because I had it on reserve. And I was just like, fine, I'll just watch The Empire Strikes Back. Then I watched Return of the Jedi. And then I just watched them in the correct order after that over and over again when I,
You're
got
making up for the sins of your youth.
Yeah. And huge fan. Had several toys. The toys were cheap, which I liked because it was one of those things where, it didn't matter what your economic stance was. You could always at least get some toys for Star Wars.
There's a good range in price on Star Wars. It's not like all Star Wars toys are those super expensive, like you would never really buy for your kid kind of toy.
Yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore, not for the new series, but when we were growing up at the time, there was a good range in price.
And you can find some of the Star Wars toys at like second-rate stores that that cost practically nothing, or you can go to like any sort of convention and find them in the bargain bins, which I think is really great for like little kids to experience one franchise that doesn't, destroy their wallet.
Their parents' wallet.
It totally can.
So, by the way, my favorite toys growing up, I didn't like dolls, but there were 2 that I had that I liked, and one of them was Mulan, and one of them was Queen Amidala, because it was like her in the red outfit with the wig.
Oh, I remember that doll, yeah.
Yeah, it's really great, you guys, because the prequels are actually what got me into costuming. And having like toys like that were like the paper doll Queen Amidala toys, and like where you could take her clothes off and look at how it's constructed was like what actually got me into making outfits and costumes and stuff.
That's awesome.
So later on, I got into I saw the special edition stuff in the theaters, which now is blasphemy. I was a little wonky on it, obviously, especially Return of the Jedi, them replacing a song that I actually really liked. Not just the Nub Nub song, but I'm talking about the song in Jabba's Palace. Like that's probably the most egregious moment out of those special editions, other than the Greedo moment and all that kind of stuff. Like, and then later, as like DVDs and Blu-rays came out, George Lucas, what did you do? I saw the prequels in the theater, each one as they came out, and quite frankly, I personally liked Revenge of the Sith the most, mainly because of tone. I felt that it was more consistent in tone than the other films, because I thought The Phantom Menace was all over the place as far as tone goes. At one point it's a slapstick kids movie for 6-year-olds, and the next moment, they're talking about like space politics and trade federations and all this kind of stuff.
Slavery.
Yeah, and not to mention like literally having alien characters that are surrogates for racial stereotypes, like the greedy Jewish character of Watto, and the Chinese Trade Federation people that talk with the same lisp and accent of stereotype Asian people. Like it was really hard to get through, and also the fact that Jar Jar Binks is basically a walking minstrel show.
The weird thing is, Ahmed Best has come forward and saying that was the voice that he put on it. George never asked for it, apparently.
Yeah,
but he did say yes.
Yeah,
that should have been cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
as much as we hate Jar Jar, that's not entirely George's fault.
So in order of favorites, I would definitely say that Empire Strikes Back is my all-time favorite Star Wars film, followed by Return of the Jedi, mainly because I like the fact that there is a deep story of redemption, something that is almost completely antithetic to mainstream films. To have a character that bad be brought back we don't do that. We kill them off. And yes, granted, he died in that moment, but that's just something that we normally don't see in blockbuster movies. So
It
that
felt
really
significant.
Yeah, it really did. It was like this wonderful philosophical idea for the 8-year-old of me to see that you can be somebody that bad and still be redeemed. That was really powerful to me. Getting on to the films that have followed, The Force Awakens was definitely a step down for me, just because it did feel a little too familiar. And one of the things that I really like about Rogue One, and Rogue One is definitely my favorite of the new films, and the reason why is because it elevates the stakes of A New Hope. Like watching those films back to back is a
Oh God, I would
wonderful
never do
experience.
something that shameful. But okay, I'm sorry.
No, it actually works really well. It does.
I rewatched the 4 good Star Wars films before Last Jedi. I will say the CGI on Graf Marth Tarkin in Episode 4 is so much better.
Wait, in Episode 4?
Yeah, it's so much better effects to bring him to life than they use in Rogue One. That was a joke. I'm sorry. That's not a very good one.
I gotta say, like for me, my favorite order of Star Wars movies is, for me, I like Return of the Jedi the most because I like the dark Luke storyline, and also, I mean, the Ewoks are cool, but that's not really why. And then Empire Strikes Back, and then actually Rogue One, and A New Hope.
I'm going to save my rankings for a little later.
Okay. So should we get into Last Jedi, or do we have some final?
Well, I think we've vamped enough. Let's do this.
All right. So, The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson of Brick and Looper fame. He also directed 3 episodes of Breaking Bad, and I think there was and The Brothers Bloom.
Underrated film.
The Brothers Bloom?
Yes, I really like The Brothers Bloom. I stayed away from it a little bit in theaters because, it's one of those sophomore films, and the trailer had a bit of a Wes Anderson vibe. But when I finally got around to see it, I realized there was a lot more going on to it. What I was very excited when it was announced that Rian Johnson was coming to Star Wars because on the one hand, he's done 3 crime films in a row, and that doesn't make a lot of sense for Star Wars. But all those films, particularly Brick, actually not even particularly, all of them, they bring a complicated sense of world building that you would expect from a sci-fi film to a genre you wouldn't expect. So there is a certain care that I have found in previous Rian Johnson films that makes a lot of sense for this. Honestly, I was really excited when this was announced.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Rian Johnson on paper is a really good choice. We will disagree with the actual execution, but I really think that based on previous properties, Rian Johnson would be somebody that I would lay my life on for making a good film. Given what he did with Breaking Bad, directing one of the best episodes of television I have ever seen, Ozymandias, absolutely amazing.
And the Flash.
Wait, which episode was it?
Ozymandias, that was the one where...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
It's one of the last ones.
Yeah, it's one of the last ones.
Okay, that the whole second, the last arc of that season was great. So I'm sure I don't know the names of the episodes, but that was hats off. So
yeah, it's the one where Walter loses everything before he goes into.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
that was a great episode.
start off by saying something I hadn't mentioned before because there's so much to unpack in The Last Jedi because I feel like it's super overlong and overbloated. But one of the big problems is that starting at the beginning, I feel like it's the first opening for Star Wars that just didn't feel special. And by opening, I mean the opening crawl. I don't mean like the opening action sequence, which I think was the best part. Well, the second best part of the movie.
I think the problem with that was that they picked up almost immediately where Force Awakens left off.
Exactly.
So nothing happened in that time jump to make us go, oh, this is what's happening.
Exactly, because it's the most useless intro that we've ever had for a Star Wars movie.
Right.
I will say I generally agree, but I will say one thing for it. I rewatched Force Awakens about an hour or so before we went to see Last Jedi, and the opening crawl of The Last Jedi emphasizes in a way that Force Awakens does not how much the good guys actually kind of lost in that film. Yes, they destroyed Starkiller Base, but the New Republic, which was, well, very badly defined in that film, was more or less destroyed. And and the crawl for Last Jedi emphasizes this loss and helps set the stage for a film that's going to be about these characters who are more desperate and more stressed and more on the line than maybe any other Star Wars film.
But it doesn't set it up better than the opening action sequence, which does it much, much, much better.
I agree.
But the point of the crawl is just to like get us in the headspace to prepare us for like what we're about to watch. So like I
feel like the opening didn't do that though. Yeah. Like something about the way it was written didn't really put me in the Star Wars mood like it usually does.
I mean,
I think I was just so hyped because it was the release. I was already in the Star Wars mood, so it worked for me.
That's a fairly minor thing. I honestly have never really thought to rank the crawls in any way, shape, or form. They are purely an expository device. I mean, the music's great, and there's always a little bit of a nostalgia pump, but you know, they're more or less all pretty disposable.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is like it usually gets me really hyped and pumped, you know, with the music and then the logo and the way the crawl goes and the, you know, the nostalgia factor and all that. But for some reason, maybe it's because I'm already having a little bit of Star Wars fatigue, but for some reason it just didn't engage me the way the opening of Star Wars usually gets me, you know?
I will say one thing that I'm really excited about is due to the fact that Disney just merged with 20th Century Fox. I'm really sorry. You know, but give me 1 second.
The entire internet just universally groans.
Right, but for 1 second, I'm really excited about seeing that reintroduced possibly.
Not going to happen. No way.
You're going to do the opening 20th Century Fox and then play the Star Wars music?
We're never going to see that again. If any, you know, Fox is going to be spun off into basically a television brand. We're not going to see it brought back to Star Wars. No. If anything, Disney is taking all of Fox's properties. No, that's not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up for that.
And also, even if they did for some reason bring that back to the movie, you would still have 20th Century Fox and then Lucasfilms and then the opening.
I mean, that's how it was before.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was it. I'm done.
I do have to say, though, so, like, I get where you're coming from. It was kind of unnecessary in this movie, but because it is part of the trilogy, it needs to have it. So it is necessary, but because it happens, it's basically just there for show.
No. I was not saying it should be cut by any means.
Oh, yeah.
There was something about the way it was written that did feel very good versus bad, which wasn't at all the tone of the movie. I just did not think it was a good setup the way it was written. I think that needed to be worked on a little bit more and possibly even padded out a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a minor thing for me, but
minor thing. I really like the opening crawls. I'm sorry.
Okay, fair.
All right, so getting back into like the actual film, I think that the opening, however, is absolutely amazing. Like this conflict that they're having, with the Star Destroyers and trying to bomb these platforms and like failing every time, and just this desperate battle. It really reminded me of The Empire Strikes Back, except in
and
space
also
this time.
Poe sort of taking on the Anakin mantle, or not the Anakin, sorry, Luke Skywalker mantle from A New Hope in the X-Fighter was super, super awesome to see.
One thing I really appreciate about that opening scene is, for movies about warfare, there isn't a whole lot of emphasis on the actual strategy and the politics of combat. And what I think this film gave a real sense of the strategy and the functions of each ships, the sense that, the fighters have to protect the bombers, and the bombers are going to be slower, and the bigger ships are slower than the little ships. And, that all helped raise the stakes. And I think one of the better moments, we have this great moment with Rose's sister that's almost something out of like Dr. Strangelove, where she knows she's going to go down with her ship for what she believes is the big, greater good. But there's also that little scene of where General Leia is looking at the ships and seeing how many ships are left. And it's not how many ships are left in this particular outfit, but for the entire rebellion. And
that was the best Leia moment in the new film by a lot. It was incredible.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of the first couple episodes of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, yes. And that's a fair steal for them, because Battlestar got its start as a Star Wars ripoff, so they owe them one.
Yeah, exactly. No. That's not a put down by any means.
No.
But I really appreciated that for Poe's character growth, because like he does come off a little hot, like especially in Force Awakens, he came off a little hot-headed. So like him going in guns a-blazing, and Leia's telling him to come back, and he just depleted their entire army, basically. Every single resource they had, he just depleted it to take down this one ship. So
and in that moment, we completely understand, because we're told this is a dreadnought or whatever it is. It's a fleet killer, and if we can knock a major blow. But what maybe the generals know or sense that Poe can't is, well, there's just another one. There's another even bigger ship 2 minutes out. And this is a film about people putting it on the line for what they believe is the bigger, greater good, but being confronted with the consequences when they're wrong.
And picking and choosing your battles.
And learning when to pick and choose your battles, and living with your truth and living with your consequences. And I think that's a great introduction to a theme that the film expands on greatly, with what it does with Luke, what it does with Kylo, what it does with Snoke. And it really starts us off in great thematic territory here.
And it really sets you up for that heartbreak when no one responds to their distress call.
Yes.
You feel the loss of the hope.
And I think the first 20-30 minutes are filled with moments that start to set that up. I know we're going to talk about what's quickly become the most contentious moment of the film, but I think that's perfectly in line with what the film is doing.
We'll get to that when we get to that.
Oh, we will get to it.
Well, we will. But yeah, I think that theme that you guys are talking about of having to face the consequences of your first instinct without thinking it through is one of the two strongest thematic elements of the movie. My problem is I feel like they didn't really stick to that enough for how long and overbloated the movie was. There was too much stuff that wasn't about that for me. But the stuff that was about that, and then the light versus dark sort of moral complexities, were really, really well done. And the opening scene was, I think, the second best part of the entire film. Like, I think it was pretty much untouchable. It felt like Star Wars, but it was also bringing the wars element of it to the forefront. And it was really doing a good job in the way that the beginning of The Force Awakens did a really good job of making you feel the weight of the casualties. A minor nitpick for me is The Force Awakens did a really good job to make you feel the casualties on all three sides, between the rebels, the Empire, and the civilians. Whereas this movie focused more on the rebels, but that's okay. I don't really have a problem with that. But
we get some
everything
civilians
felt
later
so
on.
hard. Yeah, exactly. But I feel like the movie didn't really do anything to make the casualties of the Empire feel bad the way that A Force Awakens did. But that's not a big problem for me. I just think that the weight of the situation was really good. The humor was very on point, but then Rose's sister was both really funny and really sad and touching at the same time. And I think that not for Princess Leia, but for General Leia, that was the best moment for her as a character, where she was actually being a general, but she was also handling the emotional toll of the situation on her shoulders. And I think that Carrie Fisher just did a phenomenal performance in that scene that just kind of blew me away for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, all these moments with Carrie Fisher, it like just broke my heart. Just watching, just going like, man, this is the last performance that we're ever going to see of her.
But that was one that I feel like was like really earned that idea, even with other problems that might have happened later in the movie. At least my big concern going into The Last Jedi, knowing about Carrie Fisher, was we've been waiting for so long to see Princess Leia develop as a character past Return of the Jedi, with expanded universe and, revisions to the original script. And we didn't see enough of her as a character, her development in Force Awakens. So I was like, this was literally your last chance to do something with General Leia. You have to make it count. I feel like in this scene, they did really make it count. Other problems aside, at least we have that to really hold on to as like her legacy as General Leia.
One of the biggest problems with Return of the Jedi was that it sidelined Leia. It barely made anything out of her military rank. And it also sidelined Han Solo. It is that Return of the Jedi is ultimately a film that has no idea what to do with many of its most charismatic characters. And I feel, Force Awakens kind of peppers them in. But in the case of Leia, we have one or two very strong scenes with Harrison Ford, but it's ultimately leaves you wanting more. I wish there were a little more in this film, but what we get is really incredible. And it's not just with Carrie Fisher, but it's also with Mark Hamill, who, both of our legacy.
Mark Hamill was acting his ass off. He was so good in this movie.
Well, he was really good. Despite the character assassination, he was amazing.
Right. Like, he didn't write the script, but his performance was incredible.
It was great.
I loved what they did with his character, and we're going to talk about that. But I also think that this is overall has some of the better performances that we've seen in a Star Wars film.
I definitely disagree with that.
I can't disagree with that one.
With specifically Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Adam Driver, I think the performances were just like bar none. They were trying so hard. I think I've always thought Daisy Ridley was doing like a good acting job, but she did really, really try her hardest in this movie too. And then I don't know the actress's name, but the woman who plays Rose fit in so well, and she was just so damn likable. I I just kind of have to adore her. She was awesome in this movie.
I will say that, just getting back to the whole thing with General Leia, as somebody who was really invested in what Return of the Jedi was setting up, I am disappointed. Being somebody who really invested in the expanded universe stuff growing up, I was really disappointed that Leia didn't become the Jedi that Yoda was referring to, of the whole thing of
No, there is another.
Yeah.
Or did she?
Yeah, she kind of did, but not in the right way.
Yeah,
She her character made a choice to do good where she felt she could do the most good. She was already focused on this military career of leading this resistance, leading the rebellion, and she probably had a choice to become a Jedi, but she knew that's not where she could do the most good.
Her strength lies in her politics.
I think she made the right choice for her character, and it would have been cool to see her as a Jedi, but I also think that it makes sense where she ends up in this film.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think that the way that they had Princess Leia and then General Leia, on the ground scrapping for the people that she is fighting to support, really, really works for her as strong character.
Also, let's be honest. Can you really see Carrie Fisher wanting to go to stage combat training?
No.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is not what her life is about, especially in 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, she was pretty handy with laser back in the day.
Oh, it's not to get too pervy, but in Return of the Jedi, oh my god. Oh my god.
What do you mean in Return of the Jedi? You say that as opposed to all of the movies that Princess Leia's in.
Well, we all know. I'm gonna move past that.
Please do.
All right.
So, after that initial battle sequence, it goes to the the best hidden island in the galaxy, Ireland.
Well, I mean, why is that an issue? And this is the whole first film was about establishing how remote this planet was.
No. My problem isn't how remote the planet is. My problem is that we live in a post The Dark Knight film world where they were able to do so much work to disguise Chicago and make it feel like a completely different city and make it feel like Gotham, that the fact that they shot in Ireland and you can totally tell because it just looks like Ireland is lazy to me from an artistic standpoint.
I think that planet has a lot of verisimilitude. I think Octo looks great. You know what? You go to another planet, they have goddamn islands. They have cliffs on other planets.
No. My problem isn't that it's an island. My problem is that you know which island it is in our real world.
I would not have known that had I not had this scene behind-the-scenes photos and heard that they shot in Ireland. It's an island.
See, as soon as I saw it in the original, not the original, the Force Awakens, but then again in this movie, I was like, that's just Ireland. And then come the end of credits, it was Ireland.
Honestly, this was a non-issue for me. It never even crossed my mind.
I'm an art-centric person. I'm always really paying attention to the art. So for me, it was really, really distracting. It's probably
we're all art-centric people here.
Right. I study production design. I really appreciate scenic imagery, but at the same time, it served its purpose. And I mean, I wish we could have seen more of, was it a temple? Is that the tree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wish we could have seen a little bit more of that other than the fog around the tree.
I think
but it served its purpose.
I think it felt appropriately ancient and primordial, which I think was the intent of the film.
Maybe I think what my issue is there are some sets on that island that I think work really well to sort of make it feel like its own place. I think the tree was really well done, and I think the sort of I don't mean to see this as a bad thing. I just don't know how else to describe it, but the hole into the ground.
Oh, that was great.
That was fantastic. I thought those were really great set design pieces that took this, you know, Ireland, but really made it feel like it was its own place. And I feel like we didn't have enough of that on this place to make it feel like a real inhabitable location. And it's part of a bigger issue I had throughout the film, where almost every location didn't feel like a real place, like every other Star Wars movie really made me believe it.
Right. I think Oh, go ahead.
My biggest problem was it felt like this planet lacked biodiversity.
I think every planet lacked biodiversity.
Yeah, I mean that
every planet in every Star Wars film lacks biodiversity. It is a galaxy of planets with a single environment. This is not inconsistent with the other
problem with sci-fi in general, but like,
you are holding it to a weird standard. When we've had 2 entire desert planets,
they should just set it to that one PS4 game.
But like every planet has like a lot of different kinds of life forms, whereas in this movie, almost every location felt really barren, and the one with the most diverse life forms on it was this one that had like I think a grand total of 4 plus.
Yeah, I mean you had that one sea serpent that we didn't really see. You had the fish that caught. You had the milking thing, which fucking
David Cronenberg creatures,
and you never see them again.
Right.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that it's able to establish these bizarre things, force you to ask questions about it, but then completely moves on because there's more important things going on.
Yeah.
This is a film that is constantly setting up expectations and then playing on them.
But then you had I'm just going to call them an invasive species because I can't even.
Invasive species. They never could be.
But they definitely could be, and
no, they
like
couldn't.
Who is
the porgs?
Oh God,
I love the porgs. They're cute.
I love them and I hate them. They're like Ewoks.
No. The Ewoks look amazing in comparison.
Yeah. Well, they look amazing in comparison, but like, I don't know. They're there to. Ewoks, okay. Ewoks at least had some plot relevancy. The porgs were there just to sell toys. Like
I agree that the
honestly
porgs
all they
are
were
overused, but they have some fun moments. The Chewbacca questions going vegan moment was a lot of fun.
Right, that was fun.
With the porg, and nothing else with the porgs ever works.
Yeah, and in fact,
actually, hold on a second. I will stand up for one sequence with the porgs unequivocally. That first scene where Luke is teaching Rey about the Force, one of the best descriptions of the Force we've had in all 8 of these damn movies, where we see the cycle of life and the balance of light and darkness. The porgs, we see them born, we see them live, and we see them hunted, and we see them die. The porgs are integral to that. They are integral to this very beautiful, very evocative description of the Force. I will stand up for that porg scene as being necessary. Now, did they need to be porgs? Maybe not, but they work in that scene, and they don't bother me then.
Okay, that's actually a really good point because I completely agree with you that like sort of Noah-esque scene of the life and the death and the rebirth was really, really, really good. And having a specific species tied to that scene was a good idea. But like you said, that didn't need to be porgs. Porgs were not particularly special to that concept. And one of my biggest problems with porgs is that there's no telling one porg from another porg.
No.
The way that there is that way of telling.
There's not an individual porg. You know, it's hard to tell individual chickens and individual puffins apart. They're based on puffins.
But you can tell who is Chewbacca and who isn't. You can tell.
You can also tell the Ewoks apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they are.
I mean, penguins even have.
You can even tell the Gungans apart.
Okay. Can we move on from the damn porgs?
Absolutely.
I do not understand why we're having such a porg war.
Because they were everywhere in this stupid movie.
They were in 4 scenes.
Honestly though, this movie, it felt like even though there wasn't any product placement, it felt like one giant Star Wars ad.
It did feel like
all I could see was toys.
Wait, when have these movies not been about selling toys?
Slight variations to the costumes that are like not even significant. It's like, we just did.
No, that's always been there. I think
ever since George Lucas realized that he owned the merchandising rights and realized he needed to make his own money to finance these and stay independent. These have always been movies that have, in addition to being
that's the
great
point of filmmaking
mythological
is
pastiches, have also been trying to sell you some toys.
No,
Right,
for
and, like-
sure, but here's the thing: you don't have to try to sell Star Wars toys. You
It
don't
happens on
really
its own.
Exactly. So when like it's specifically like we need to make a minimum of 5 different Pokemon style cute creatures
But
specifically
they
to sell
are
toys.
cute and they are funny, and I enjoy the porgs.
I don't enjoy the porks
They're
at all.
maybe-
They look like they all want to be euthanized. It's
They are in
disturbing.
maybe. This is a 2.5-hour movie, and they are in maybe 4 minutes of them.
Yeah,
They're
but like
way
in
too much
serious
movie.
scenes where
You know,
Rey is training, you're hearing their little warbled squawk, and
You know,
it
this
seriously
is also
affecting
a
the
very
scene.
somber. This is a very somber Star Wars movie on the whole. It is the most desperate. It is potentially
I also laughed the most at
arguably
this
the
movie.
darkest.
Seriously calling this the most desperate Star Wars movie when we have The Empire Strikes Back.
And we also
Yes,
have no plot.
and for the record, look, you need some comic relief, and it is nice to have them cut back to. Now, do they overdo it a bit? Yeah, but is this really something that deserves going on about for 12 damn minutes?
Yeah,
Hell
I
no.
think it is because
Let's
that's about
not.
how much time they had on screen.
There's so much more interesting things to talk about with this.
Hey, let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Let me talk about some stuff that I like about this film. Let's not go scene by scene because we will be here all damn night if we do that.
Right.
This is a film. I think about where Star Wars came from in the cultural landscape. It was a pastiche, but it was one that has surpassed its pastiches. It's Flash. Lucas could not get the rights to Flash Gordon, so he said, "Fuck it, I'll make my own Flash Gordon, and I'll throw in a bunch of samurai movies and some World War II bombing films." And what Johnson has done with this movie is he has updated some of those references. He's doubled down on the samurai tradition, and many of the battles in this film are spiritual. We have Rashomon-style flashbacks designed to complicate the intentions of this film. There's even some Wuxia combat. There's the David Cronenberg cow creatures. There's some Akira, and there's 40s Hollywood. Johnson has built his version of Star Wars in a very similar way that Lucas built his. And I think a lot of the juxtapositions are they're more eclectic, they're stranger, and they are still very, very evocative. And
my biggest problem with this movie, though, is it ruins the mythology and the lore that all the other films have set up. It jumps the shark.
How does it jump the shark?
It changes the whole idea of the Force. Okay, first example.
And how?
Leia.
Wait. You just said like this was the best explanation of the Force we ever had. It's completely true, but the problem is that even the explanation of the Force that we have in this movie about how it's all about the sort of cyclical nature of life, it's sort of this like life force that's felt throughout the galaxy. It's the life and death and the rebirth and the balance of the dark and the light and all this stuff. It's not about floating rocks and shit. But then the entire rest of the movie uses the Force as just magic and floating rocks and shit and being able to Skype chat with each other. And it's just...
How is that different from the other films that did this?
Communicating like mentally like they did in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
They affect each other,
Yeah, and it's like, how? Like, we've never seen this before, and I could understand...
Yes, we have. We saw it in Empire Strikes Back. We saw it in Return of the Jedi.
Okay, nobody survived space from sheer force will.
Well, why shouldn't we? Let me tell you, it has always been magic. They're space wizards.
No, it hasn't always been magic.
No, it's chi. Okay, chi and European fantasy. Like, Star Wars was based on Asian mythology and philosophy and all that kind of stuff.
And Western philosophy. It's a huge melting pot.
A little bit of Western philosophy, but I would argue that most of it. I would argue that most of it is based on East Asian philosophy and mythology, and the whole concept of the Force is similar to chi. Now they switch this and make this you know, similar to like King Arthur lore and all this kind of stuff. And like that really rubs me off the wrong way. The fact that the Force is essentially just magic really rubs me off the wrong way.
Well, you know, I love the Space Leia scene because it was surprising and it was magical. And also, like, let me tell you something.
It was surprising, but it wasn't magical.
It took me out of the movie.
When she gets sucked out of that, let me talk about what happens right before. You know, when she is sucked out of that spaceship, my heart sank. Not because, like, oh, it would have been a sad end, but because I thought, oh my God, is this how they're really going to write Carrie Fisher out of the damn movie? And the relief I had when I realized that's not what they were going to do, that they were going to do something, they were going to be a little classier than that, and also show us something surprising and whimsical.
And
reinvent it.
Space classy. This is like Star Wars Superman episode 4 levels of just completely ridiculous. There was nothing classy.
First off, like this
first grader, and they will explain to you why that scene doesn't fucking work.
Well, first off, you know, none of these movies have ever been concerned with scientific accuracy, but you can survive the vacuum of space for about 5 or 6 minutes. The
problem, though, is that this movie has set rules.
By biology, you can.
NASA
did studies with dogs in the 60s. It's actually very disgusting stuff, but you can survive a vacuum for about 5 or 6 minutes on your own. I love the fact that we did learn that she does have more significant force ability than we have. I like that it's not really gotten into how much force ability or training that we have. Is this something she would learn to do? Is this instinct? I don't know. The force is always, yes, it's related to the concept of chi, but it's also not only that. And what's great about Star Wars is often the sense of not really understanding everything going on because there's a world that's bigger and more magical than you are. And you can't learn it all and you can't understand it all. And so, and also, you know, the scene with Space Leia, it's when we see how much that takes out of her, she's basically out of commission for the rest of the movie. It sets up what happens to Luke near to the end of the film. And it also, you know, there's something thematic going on here, too, because, you know, this was, I later learned, was all shot and completed before Carrie Fisher died. So it's in there for a reason. And the film is about desperation. It's about a few other things too, but it's about desperation and finding hope and finding relief and finding maybe some redemption. There's something similar to that going on in my emotional experience of, is she going to die? Oh no, she isn't. She's come back. But it's also taken everything out of her. And that's similar to the journey of the Resistance throughout this entire film.
For me, the big problem with Space Leia, though, is like Space Leia is the beginning of the end of General Leia as a character because it immediately goes from she can just survive space from the Force. Okay, she can also just completely annihilate the idea of the vacuum of space when she re-enters the spaceship. Like nothing gets sucked out of the spaceship like it would in real life. And yes, I know what you said, like, oh, well, they're not really concerned with the physics of space, but it's 2017. First graders know how this works. It's just a little insulting.
And first graders should know that you can survive the vacuum of space.
Wait, hold on.
But that does not teach that. But then also, it does take General Leia out of commission for the rest of the movie, which I hated. Yeah. I hate that this is yet another movie sidelining Leia as a character, putting her as more of a damsel in distress than she's ever been, by having her be in a coma. And then when she comes back, she's busting down doors because now all of a sudden she has just as strong force abilities as freaking Rey does, because everyone can just do whatever they want because the Force eliminates any need for consistency or limitations as it has in every single other film before.
But there are limitations, and this film shows
no, they're not.
Yes, you know,
there was never a limitation
using
at
that
any
much force power puts her in a coma. And what Luke does at the end, using that much force power, it kills him.
Which I didn't even realize killed him because the way they set it up did not even seem like the death of a main character.
I completely understood.
He joined the Force.
He joined the Force.
No, I get that, but nothing about it was framed like that was what was happening. I literally just thought he had fixed it.
I mean, it took me aback. I was like, oh my God, is Luke gone?
I think his death scene was beautifully understated, very poetic, and I really dug it. And it really, you know, it saw him come to terms with his baggage of having believed his own hype, a consistent theme throughout the film, and him trying to redeem himself, not just as a Jedi, not just as a human being, but also as a teacher.
Okay, but let me put it to you like this. You guys are talking about limitations of like literally insane Doctor Strange levels of bending time and space and physics. Go back to the original trilogy, or even to Rogue One, where the limitations are so much more basic, where the Force is there, and maybe if like you're really in tune with it, it can give you like a little bit of XP credit, but it's not something you can just rely on to get you out of any given situation, like it is in this movie.
Remember when in Rogue One, when that one Cypher character just walked across a field because he believed in the Force?
But like that didn't ultimately save his life. He just got like super lucky. Like that's something.
Yeah,
he was kind of controlling the firepower around him.
See, the other thing is like, sorry, keep going. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's just like me as a more casual viewer of the movies, you know, because like I really still like the prequels. I try not to tear these movies apart. It took me out of the film experience when Leia flew through space. Like that shouldn't happen.
But why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they try something?
Well, the thing is though, is like you this is the 7th film in these in the Skywalker story, and when you've set up a set of rules, you set up trust with your viewer, and it felt like it broke that. It made it fantastical past the point of like, oh, there's sound in space. Like we all know there's no sound in space, and like, you know, you can't hear cannons, like the blasters, you can't hear explosions, but yet in the movies we have that because one, it would be boring otherwise because most of this takes place in space. So like that's fine, we get over that hurdle. But her flying through space after living through an explosion without any sort of mark on her body was just, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was super happy Leia was fine because I also didn't want her to go like that. But at the same time, like knowing this is Carrie Fisher's last movie, like how are they going to kill her off in the next movie? They said they're not going to CGI her. What are they going to do now?
I have no idea. That is
she just survived being
Abrams
blown up in space. How is she going to, like, what is she going to do in the next movie? So they kind of shot themselves in the foot.
I'm absolutely with you on all of that.
I'm so glad they did not kill her that way. I think, yeah, does it alter the rules? Yeah, but you know, we've had sudden force powers introduced before, and I thought of
many in one movie.
But this was like godlike power.
We saw
force. The Force is like controlling the it's not even controlling. It's just you're being one with this entity, and you understand how to use it, wield it, and you move with it. Flying through space.
Well, why not?
A vacuum.
Why not? She used the Force to create, like, I don't know, some sort of force field of air around her that shielded her somewhat, and she was able to push. You know, we've seen it in all these films, people push objects around. So she could just push herself back or pull herself back. We've seen stuff not terribly similar to this in other films. The application is new, but we've seen stuff not entirely unlike that. And it's in service of a beautiful, whimsical image that I thought was trying something bold and new. And if there's one problem that I had and a lot of people had about The Force Awakens is that it was not trying very much.
Yeah, but to quote Han Solo,
that's not how the Force works.
Exactly.
Why not? Why not?
Because they do that too many times in one freaking movie.
Where else do they do that?
Where do you go from there? Where do you go from there?
Kira, where else do they do that?
They do that with Rey. They do that with
where?
They do that with Princess Leia. They do that with General Leia again in the same movie.
Where else do they where else do they invent new force powers suddenly?
The Skyping.
Yeah, the Skyping was.
They've done that before.
No, wait. The fact that Rey can actually.
When have they done that before?
Kylo Ren.
No.
Empire Strikes Back.
No, because they communicated audibly. They weren't present.
Okay, so they enhanced. It's a variation of a power we've seen.
They touched hands.
They
explain that.
Why
you need
not?
to explain.
And that's
Luke
a great
saw
moment
him.
in the film that
Luke
serves a
looked right
dramatic
at
purpose.
Kylo and saw him.
Why are you
That
not
was
allowing these people to have any freedom to have an imagination to try new things?
Here's another problem.
What
you're saying is
because they set rules.
Yes.
And when Jedis communicate with each other through long distances, what they usually do is they have a technology that has, the distorted blue body, and they're communicating that way. So, I don't understand why you have to introduce this, because it doesn't really add anything to the narrative. In fact, it just,
Yes, it does. It's because those scenes of them Skyping with each other are about them getting into each other's heads on a metaphorical level, and they made that metaphor literal, and that is absolutely in service of it. And for me, yeah, there's rules, and there's some rules they fudged over the years that bother me. I still don't like it that they have weapons that can block lightsabers, but if it's in service to something dramatic, that is much more important to me than the little nitty-gritty details.
Okay, but Loren, here's the big problem with the Skyping thing, is that it's so ridiculously easy for them to do that, and so commonplace for them, that they keep doing it without their own will or consent. That's a big problem. They're not even trying to use the Force to do that. It's just happening by accident all the time.
Well, I have to say that gets explained in the movie. Snoke says he was the one who established a connection in their minds, and he was the one who was forcing them to talk to each other.
All Kylo is shirtless. Good job, Snoke. Thank you for that.
Oh my God, I have that in my notes. I am so upset that happened. I felt like I was being sexually assaulted by this weird high-waisted pant man.
Well, you only one BB.
His torso so weird.
You weren't the only one. BB-8 actually gets molested in this movie too.
Because somebody mistakes him for a slot machine.
That little Gringotts goblin was totally sexually assaulting him. That was not cool.
He's a robot. They don't have sex.
That doesn't mean they don't have a personal bubble that can.
I don't know. Rule 34, dude.
Okay, within the Star Wars universe,
my baby.
BB-8 is not a sexual being. You can. So come to think of it, R2-D2 does have a penis.
What?
BB-8
when I was rewatching
he's
the film
like a
with
dog.
my girlfriend, he is like a dog. He is like a dog, or like a pork.
No.
BB-8 though, he's like my dog. I want to protect him with my life, and I
understand. I love him.
And it's it's this, and Poe treats it like a dog, it's his pet. So I felt really bad for BB-8, but it came back to help the situation out because he started throwing coins at the guards, so it worked. But at the same time, I felt really bad.
Actually felt up all over his body by this dude in a drunken stupor to make that scene happen.
Right. Can we, now that we're on the casino, can we talk about how out of place it felt?
Why was it a James Bond movie and a Star Wars movie? Why?
Well, it felt like I was going back to the prequels to a large extent.
But even those
one of those plants with the fantastic art design, and they use the casino plant. What is it there for to do? And what I think some of the art direction does miss there. I do think their tuxedos are a little too familiar, but it is also saying things about how this universe works that we have never seen before. We get a better sense of class, of the military-industrial complex, the haves and the have-nots, and that's an interesting wrinkle that hasn't really come up before. The prequels tried, but they're so ham-fisted they couldn't do it.
I appreciated them trying to give Finn his own character arc where he wants to fight with the Resistance, because in The Force Awakens he really didn't care. He just wanted to be with Rey and save Rey. And in this movie they were trying to give him his own sense of identity, and that he can make decisions for himself apart from other people. So like I appreciated like Rose being there and telling him her life story and him being able to look at it from a new perspective, and him going to fight and almost sacrificing his life for the Resistance. But at the same time, I felt like they could have gone about it in a better way.
But it didn't involve our heroes being arrested for a parking violation and then having to set Chocobo horsies free.
Yeah.
Low-key,
I
so
like
low-key,
that scene. That's a good scene.
It did not need to be in this movie. Like, there was too much stuff going on with that subplot that didn't tie into anything else where we needed to be putting our focus into.
What I really had hopes for going into this movie, because of the way that the second movie and the other two trilogies were set up, was that, like, you know, one hero is off by themselves and the other two are spending time on their own little adventure. I was hoping that Poe and Finn would be off, like, maybe on Yavin 4 or something, like, some, like, buddy cop thing, and then that's where Finn would have this character growth. Because I knew it was going to happen. He needed to, like, find his own identity, but...
I agree, we need more Stormpile in the next one.
And I completely agree with you, Haley. And what I think really sucks is, I mean, I really loved Rose's character. I'm not really for making any alterations that would remove her from the story. But I completely agree. I completely agree that expanding more on Poe and Finn's friendship would have been really great. And I hate to say this. Or potential romance. And what I really hate about this is I think that the reason why that didn't happen was because Disney. I mean, well, yeah, because Disney is not going to have a gay romance, and that sucks, and shame on them. But what I hate was, like, the chemistry, platonic, romantic, whatever. It worked with them so well. And I think that because they see any sort of heterosexual friendship as with men as being inherently, it has to be super gay, and people were making fun of, like, Finn and Poe being gay, even though there's nothing wrong with that. They immediately just went like, oh, nope, we can't have them be friends anymore. We have to, like, have Finn go off with another girl and introduce a different potential romance and like, really solidify that he's totally straight, you guys. It's really frustrating because why can't you have two dudes be friends or more? That's fine, but, well, like,
I get it, because,
they
like,
can't have a relationship. What the fuck?
I went to the same thing for men and women.
Yeah, I went to film school. True. And, like, that's you know, true. Like,
we all went
to
film school.
Yeah, we all went to film school.
Okay, yeah. All right, so we all went to film school, and I will say that, like, with some people, they drive the queer theory really, really hard. Like, you know, any sort of relationship between two men has to be perceived as a homosexual undertones or something like that.
That's not coming out of nowhere because
Ren,
Oscar said he played it that way.
Filmmakers who are often queer themselves and want to explore their feelings on film.
I totally understand that, but
so
like
long in film history, you had to have that subtext because you couldn't actually say that they were gay publicly. You had to make it subtextual, so that's not coming out of nowhere.
And
Can I add some?
Yes,
can I add something super important though? Oscar Isaac, who plays Poe Dameron, said himself he played it up. He
completely agree.
He played into Poe being into Finn since the beginning.
I can totally see it too.
So it's not just like people wanting something to happen. That's like two people having chemistry in their roles, and the actors who, like, I mean, even the entire cast wants it to happen. J.J. Abrams has said, you know, it's like it's potential. Like, he sees where people are coming from with it. I am fine if it doesn't happen. I'm honestly okay with it. But, like, at the same time, like, they kind of they set it up so well in Force Awakens. They really did.
And they did great chemistry together. Yeah. So I could totally see it. You know, the only thing that I say is, like, I do understand that, like, I think we need to lay off, although we need much more queer characters, I think we need to lay off any sort of interaction between two men as friends has to be like, you know, seen
Well,
as like
I don't believe.
sort of homosexual
but
undertone.
not in this film specifically.
Yeah,
And with women, you know, when two
well,
women
no,
are
actually,
like girls and stuff like that, we don't automatically assume that they're lesbians.
so
Probably
that
would
scene
do.
between Holdo and Leia, when Leia's getting on the transport, I felt like a spark there, and I read
think
queer
I
subtext.
I totally read that there was something going on there, which
I mean,
I'm
part
totally cool
of
with.
that
I
is
mean,
just
like,
because Laura Dern has a very sexual energy in many of her parts, and
Yeah.
supposedly she did
Right.
play that as queer, but like, you know,
it's Disney, so they can't like actually
Right.
make
well,
it.
you know, look, it's not quite as bad. It's not quite as bad as when Disney promised that Lumiere and the Beauty and the Beast remake was going to be super gay, guys, and then of course he
No,
wasn't.
that wasn't Lumiere. That was Gaston's sidekick
Thank you,
dude.
guest star. You know what I mean?
No, not
they
Gaston. Name.
the press.
It doesn't matter.
The press played something up much more than it was ever going to actually exist, and unfortunately, part of it's not just Disney. It's a question of, you know, can a film with a gay scene get released in China? And unfortunately, there are some global political implications to that.
Make an edit.
Anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, and also I would say like there are ways to do it. I mean, we've seen this on TV many times. There are ways to do
Avatar,
it that feels
Legend of Korra.
natural, and there are ways that you do it that feel
Yeah, but at the
forced.
same time, like, look, as a queer person myself, I am tired of films that beat around the bush about it. Look, it's
Oh my
2017.
God.
Either do it or
Queer
don't.
subtext needs to end. Like, just come out with it.
Like just have queer characters or don't have queer characters.
And look, here's the thing. In terms of the film and the narrative, whether or not Laura Dern is into General Leia is so beside the point of what that film is about.
I agree, but going back to what Haley was saying. Well, going back to what Haley was saying for a second, like, I completely agree that if you were going to have a gay couple in Star Wars, it would make perfect sense to have it be Finn and Poe, because that chemistry is already there. It's not established as being like uncharacteristic for either of them to actually be in a relationship like it is with the Avengers. It makes perfect sense. But if you have to have a stick up your butt and not do it at all, can they at least be friends and like have a good relationship with one another?
Because they end like Rogue One.
Yeah, I will say that the Disney films in general, in both heterosexually and homosexually, have been very sexless on the whole, and I'm okay with that. But it is something to note that they are generally sexist on all sexualities.
My thing, okay, so has anyone watched Legend of Korra and like finished it?
I haven't finished it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so just a spoiler alert. There is two characters who develop a really close bond over the course of the series. They start off as rivals. It's two women, and at the end of it, they walk off into the sunset. Now, because of Nickelodeon, these story writers were not allowed to actually show them getting together. But literally the ending is them walking off into the sunset, and then later on the show creators wrote a comic on it and went more into their relationship, and it was an established relationship at that point. Like, Star Wars could give us that. They have an entire expanded universe in the books and comics and even TV shows. Make it like an ambiguous ending. And I'm not even saying it has to be Poe and Finn, but like, give us something. I mean, like, even J.K. Rowling like retconned and said Dumbledore's gay. So like, I want something. I'm not saying it has to be Star Wars, but like, it's like one of the biggest franchises out there. Why not? You know?
Yeah, and if there's any franchise that can push progressivism in a natural way, it's Star Wars. I mean, look, the first film, the two stars were a woman and a black guy.
And the other trio was,
Okay.
So
you said the first film. I was just clarifying.
Right, and in this film, we have an established Asian character, an Asian female, which we hardly ever get outside of, the nerdy one, or you know, the person who's a prostitute or something like that. Like, you know, Asian characters get sidelined so many times, and it's nice to see that she has an opportunity for once.
This film has pushed progressivism a great deal. I think it's fantastic that in 2015 and 2017 we had $200 million blockbusters that starred a woman, a black man, a Latino man, and now co-starring in a Asian woman who had a real character death. Kelly Marie Tran hasn't done a whole lot, but she makes a very strong impression in this film. I think her character might be a little underwritten, but she acts the hell out of that underwritten part, which is honestly the test of a good actress.
I fell in love with her like the second she walked up to Finn. Like she just has this. Like they introduced her in such a great way.
She's also the kind of character we don't see very often in Star Wars. You know, we usually will see the top generals, we see the top Jedi, we see the chosen ones. You know, she's a security guard / janitor, engineer, and
well, that's what
you know, and
was.
and honest, yes, and I think one of the brilliant subversions of both Force Awakens, but even more in The Last Jedi, is that the whole shattering the idea of that the heroes have to be the privileged ones, the ones with the anointed bloodline, the chosen ones, etc. You know, the Star Wars prequels came out at this weird time where we had a lot of chosen ones. We had the prequels, we had The Matrix, we had Harry Potter, and all those films
Lord of the Rings.
had this. They weren't chosen in Lord of the Rings, but
they were chosen by
but they weren't chosen by the forces of destiny. My issue with that has always been that once you're chosen by destiny, you have no agency and nothing you do actually matters. And it has been a blight on blockbuster filmmaking for the last when did the prequels start coming out? About 15 years. The last 15 years.
Yeah.
But Loren,
and The Last Jedi destroys that. It shatters that. It burns it all down. And I love that about it.
I don't agree with that at all because Rey is still a chosen one. Even
She's
She's
just
happy. No.
Parents sold her for drinking.
Wait a minute. Wait. Hang on. Let me make my point. First of all, I still do not believe this bullshit. You came from nothing. Your parents were no one and they sold you. I don't believe any of that. I think that's a lie that's meant to stave us off for another movie. There is literally no way that that's true. But even if it is true that she came from nothing and her parents were nobody and it's not in her bloodline, she is still a chosen one by the Force. Because she is so strong with the Force, she is just a superhero who can do fucking anything. She can fight, she can fly, she does everything. She can fight, she can fly ships, even though she has next to no experience with them.
She has so much experience flying ships. They established that in Force Awakens.
Lauren.
Oh my God.
In the Force
Awakens,
this
fight for 2 years.
Wait, Lauren. In the Force Awakens, they say that she has flown small ships on planet in that city. Not that she can fly.
How is this any different from Luke Skywalker, who went from flying small farm equipment ships, which is what those T-86s were, to flying an X-Wing? How is it any different from Anakin Skywalker, who could fly a pod race, the only human being who could fly a pod race? Rey is no different in this regard from other people, but what is different is the message of the film, which is that maybe you are from nothing, maybe you're not, but it doesn't matter if you're anointed or not, because it's what you do with what you're given. Everything that has gone wrong in this trilogy is Luke Skywalker's fault, because he believed that chosen one crap, he believed his status as a legend, he believed his own hype, and he thought that he was infallible, and he fucked up. Same thing with Poe Dameron. And what Luke tells Rey is that forget all that shit, all that worship about, oh, my parents have to be special and I need to be special and I want to be special. Forget all that, whether it's true or not. And it's also true of Kylo Ren, who is trying to live up to this bloodline, but it's ultimately he ultimately fails at that. He fails in almost his first scene of his intention of being the next Darth Vader. Well, this whole film is what is it that Snoke says? Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. And Luke
he lets go of
is in agreement with Snoke about this, because Luke is saying, yeah, the Jedi, the past, destroy it. Build your own thing. None of this is really working. We've been in a cycle of war for thousands of years in this universe, and it's time to burn it all down. And that is a fantastic deconstruction, subversion of all that hero's journey, chosen one stuff that Star Wars popularized, but has become so cliche and tried that it has just calcified over this genre.
Loren, can I please finish my point? Because what you said sounds super nice if that was the way they handled it, but it is absolutely not the way that it has been handled in the past 2 movies.
I'm talking about Last Jedi. I'm talking about this movie.
I'm talking about Last Jedi, but it does feed into the movie that was built to support this movie, The Force Awakens. A big part of that was based on introducing these characters and introducing this storyline.
Yeah, and it was too familiar.
Yes, it was too familiar, but they just make it worse in this movie. But its roots are in the last movie. Here's the problem with Rey as the Chosen One. She can do literally everything. She can fly the Millennium Falcon, a 2-pilot vehicle, by herself the first time she ever tries, even though she has barely flown anything in her life and has not studied it or trained in it like Luke Skywalker did. And Luke Skywalker would never be able to fly the Millennium Falcon by himself the first time he tried.
He figured out the X-Wing. He reached out with his feelings, and he blew up the Death Star without his targeting computer. It's something all those super trained, super ace pilots couldn't do. This is Rey's abilities. Maybe they're a tiny bit stronger, but they're in the same realm.
Loren, that is one moment of pure instinct. That is not actually being able to fly the X-Wing by yourself.
Right, yeah.
And it's and he had BB-8 helping him. Completely different.
R2-D2.
Yes, R2-D2. He had R2-D2 helping him fly it and repairing the X-Wing. It's literally a completely different circumstance. But going on from the flying thing that she's able to do just because the Force is strong with her, she's able to do the Jedi mind trick, which she doesn't.
Wait.
No. She literally does not know that is a thing.
But it was demonstrated to her.
How was it demonstrated to her?
Didn't Kylo do that to her?
Yes.
Kylo did that to her, but she doesn't know that that is a thing she can do. She's never
I think it's more of her being curious and trying it and then going, oh, it worked. I must have the Force.
But it's literally worked for her perfectly the first time she ever tries it. That's a little ridiculous. It's not like Luke Skywalker was just immediately perfect at everything he ever tried the very first time he ever tried it, regardless of how familiar or unfamiliar he was with it. That's ridiculous.
I don't recall ever seeing Luke Skywalker failing at piloting a ship
But he does suck at fighting with a lightsaber or using the Force.
He's pretty good at using a lightsaber.
His plane got shot down in the beginning of The Empire Strikes Back, and he had to jump out of it and take down an AT-AT.
He also got beat up by a Wampa pretty bad.
Yeah, he also, when he was going to Dagobah, crashed his X-Wing into the swamp, and then Yoda used the Force to rise it up. And that was that whole moment where, Luke had a small understanding of the Force and thought, oh, you could lift rocks and stuff. And Yoda, said the whole size matters not, and then he lift the X-Wing.
Mm-hmm.
So
he fails over and over and over again, even after he's undergone training and some education on what he is and what he can do. I mean, even the whole thing at the beginning of The Empire Strikes Back, where he's in the cave and he's
he loses to just a regular monster.
Wait. But there's also the scene where he's in the cave where he's trying to get the lightsaber to come to him with the Force, and it's hard and it's trying. And Rey can do that immediately, and it's never difficult.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay. We are still not talking about The Last Jedi.
But even in The Last Jedi, though, this should have been the movie for her to actually practice her Jedi training, and she didn't at all.
Exactly.
She already knows what to do. She switches straight from her staff to her lightsaber, and Luke's like, "Oh shit," and then runs away. So I mean, and she connected to the Force almost immediately.
I mean, what's
she
wrong
had
with
one
her?
bad try.
What is, you know, I've always had a theory that she's strong with the Force. First off, what's wrong with that? And this is, again, it's a little more intense than other protagonists in the series, but it's not outrageously
Are you admitting
different.
that she's the
also,
chosen
you know,
one?
She is the chosen one.
She has strong power. She is not necessarily chosen one. This whole film is about how the chosen one stuff was always bullshit. You can be strong with the Force, but you're not necessarily the chosen one. And it's about what you do with your power that makes the difference. You know, you got to make your own way, and you got to make your own decisions, and you got to apply that power with responsibility. And that's what this film's about. And I think it's a fantastic message.
I think what this is leading to is, I mean, back in the prequels when they were talking about the chosen one and bringing balance to the Force, and I can't remember who said it, but someone mentioned, okay, I think it was Yoda and Obi-Wan talking, that he's like, he was supposed to restore balance to it, like Anakin was, and he kind of did, because he destroyed the Jedis, and kind of balanced out how many Jedis there were versus how many Sith Lords there were, or Sith Lord and his apprentice. But I think now it's like just down to Rey and Kylo Ren, and it's going to come down to morals, and she's supposed to be the light and he's supposed to be the dark. What I think it's going to boil down to is the moral gray that Luke was kind of existing in this movie. And it's going to be like, you're not ever holistically good or bad.
And I think that's a very interesting and unique wrinkle in this universe where morality has always been very black and very white.
It hasn't. First of all, no, it has not. Even the prequels were all about the idea of the dark is not evil and the light is not good.
I don't know.
It tried some of that. It never sold me on any of that shit because it's so badly written.
Darth Insidious was like
the Last Jedi doesn't sell me on it either. It really
The Last Jedi sells me on perfectly, because I will say this is the first time where I understood why someone would really want to go to the dark side. I understood Kylo's journey, and I understood his point of view.
Anakin's journey. So
Anakin's journey was, I had a dream where my wife died in childbirth, maybe.
Well,
I guess I'll go to the dark side.
It was starting before that.
Weak sauce.
No,
he was starting totally before that, but the stuff that pushed him to it was dramatically very weak sauce. But the stuff that happens in this film with between Luke and Ben Solo, I thought that felt very emotionally true.
Loren. What? Okay, I think that Kylo Ren is the best developed character in this movie, which is kind of a problem. But with Rey,
why is it a problem that's well developed?
Because
there are no character arcs in this movie.
Nobody develops or gets better by the end of the movie except for Kylo Ren. Here's the thing with Rey.
What about Luke Skywalker? He has a massive arc.
Actually, Poe had a good character arc.
And so did Poe. Poe learned to be a little less hot-headed.
So did Finn.
I have a lot of problems with the way that worked out.
The character arcs are very minor in this film, outside of...
Wait, going back to Rey's storyline for a minute, there is this whole thing about, like, first of all, she can just immediately tap into the Force and feel all of the life force. Okay, fine. Sure enough. And then there's this whole thing of, like, oh, she's immediately drawn to the dark side and she doesn't even try to resist it. Well, that sounds interesting. But then when she delves into the dark side, she's like, who are my parents? Who were my parents? Oh, the dark side's not going to tell me? Never mind. I have no interest. There is no temptation. And it never comes back to that. So
there was temptation. Absolutely, there was. Why does she go?
She didn't have a choice between something. I don't know. In Harry Potter, when he's looking into the mirror of Eris and he sees his parents, you know, and then at the end of the movie, he's tempted by it with the stone. And then, like, even at the end of Harry Potter, he's tempted by it with the ring. I mean, like, that's showing the temptation of, I guess, like, you know, going against your morals or whatever, going against what you need to be doing for the good. But in this movie, she didn't have a choice when she looked. She didn't have a decision to make when she looked in that cave. It was just
But she
her
has
standing
decisions
there.
later. She has decisions later.
But
And the
that
thing
was
is,
her
this
supposed
film,
to be facing the dark side.
the way Snoke tempts people with the dark side is by preying on their insecurities. Actually, it's the way he controls everyone, not just tempting people to the dark side. It's how he controls Kylo. It's how he controls General Hux. It was weakness. Knowing someone's weakness is the way to control them, or something like that. It keeps them in line. And you know what? And Rey's biggest problem is that she is convinced that she needs to be special and she needs to be someone, and for that to be, she needs to be. So her parents need to be someone. And that's the thing that leads her down a path towards all the stuff with Kylo Ren. And when she is confronting Luke Skywalker and drawing her lightsaber on him and basically threatening to kill him, that is as close to really going over to the dark side as we've seen in at least 5 or 6 movies. And it's it's not as close as Revenge of the Sith, but I actually believed it this time.
That is not as close as Luke went in Return of the Jedi, and that's not as close as Luke went in this movie. You are really stretching to try to make Rey's journey actually mean anything, because Haley was right on the money.
Well, it meant something to me.
Better in Harry Potter. It's been done better in Lord of the Rings. And here, she didn't have a choice. She didn't have a temptation. She looked at it. She was like, it's not going to give me the answers. I have no interest. And it never comes back to her.
She did have an interest.
Hell,
Why did she leave Octo? Why did she leave Octo? Do you remember? She left Octo because Kylo Ren said, I know who your parents are. Come to me and I will tell you. That is her being tempted. That is her making a decision. That is her giving into her insecurity.
She saw his future and thought she could bring him to the good
That's
side.
what happened. Exactly.
And that is the other thing that happened. But she
didn't care about her parents.
I know the secret of your parents and I have seen them.
But
Come to me and I'll tell you.
Okay,
no, he said that to her.
Wait.
No. He said that to her once they were in the elevator together after she already went to him.
Yeah.
Okay, I could be wrong about that, but it is definitely a thing that is playing in her mind as to why she continues to be there and why and all the stuff that goes on, that fantastic throne scene that does riff on Return of the Jedi, but also goes much further than that because we'll get into it.
But hold on. The thing is, though, during that last Skype call between them, he never mentions her parents. He just says, I had a vision of you, and she says, I had a vision of you. And then they're talking about, the morals of everything. And then that's when Luke walks in and she confronts him about how he treated Ben, as she calls him.
And that's a fantastic scene.
No, it's not, because I never believed for a second, as you said, that she was threatening to kill him. That is ridiculous.
No, she was trying to prove a point. And I have such a huge problem with what they did with Luke. This little brief lapse in judgment of him where he's standing over this little kid. Well, he's not even a little kid. He's probably like a teenager at this point. But he's standing over him and he pulls his saber on him. I can't in my heart believe Luke Skywalker would do that to his nephew.
And that's why it's heartbreaking.
Well, but I can't wrap my head around that.
I mean, it's not a bad story.
This has been a year full of finding out that people would do things that we never thought was possible.
But that's true. They don't even go into they don't go into how much Ben had fallen to the dark side. Who was Snoke? I want some flashbacks proving the shit. How bad Snoke was. And, why was he even there?
Snoke was the biggest waste of a villain that I've seen in the Star Wars films. He's even worse than Count Dooku.
Yeah. I mean, Count Dooku actually had,
because Count Dooku was never interesting.
Well, okay, but Count Dooku had a bigger role in the Clone Wars, which is where I'm referencing him from. So, I have that kind of relationship with his character. But, in the movies, he was kind of pointless.
Going back to what you were saying, Haley, I think that it's a good story arc, like I like the idea behind that scene, but I agree with you that I couldn't really believe in that scene, and I think that is a failure of development and story writing. It's not that that event would ever happen, and I don't believe that, but I don't believe it the way it was unfolded. I don't believe it because there's not enough behind it to make me think that it was desperate enough for it to get to that point. Like, it was just a thing that happened for the sake of backstory, and a really
works
scene for a trailer.
Right, and it works for Rey's character, like her response, and to get her to respond that way. But it doesn't work for the audience who has grown up with Luke and saw his rise to becoming a Jedi.
Exactly.
To see his character from the very beginning.
It explains that he has bought into himself so much, and his weight of responsibility and this moment of fear. He had a great line. In one moment of fear and weakness, I acted, and then immediately felt the consequence. And I thought that was beautiful. I bought it, and it was heartbreaking because it's not something that I would have expected. And
I could have expected it out of Obi-Wan in the prequels with Anakin, maybe, but we don't have enough context between Luke and Ben and their relationship there.
Yeah,
it was too much in the background.
And going on,
I agree that section could have been fleshed out a little bit more, but there's also the film's already so long,
right?
Well, exactly. So
and you got to save something for the next one.
Well, but we were too busy focused on the Rose and Finn and all the stuff in the Rebel Alliance that we couldn't establish what seemed to be the crux of the film.
Exactly. Like we're too busy with all of these plots, subplots. Don't go anywhere.
And then Finn and Rose's side plot didn't even lead to anything but the entire Rebel Alliance being demolished.
Exactly.
That's all that they succeeded in. And
yeah, they fucked up. And I like that these characters can fuck up and lose not just because the odds are against them, but because they made mistakes.
But they lost in a really big way, and I don't think they seem to realize that.
And actually,
I absolutely disagree.
Because the next scene that we see, BB-8's freaking controlling an AT. No, he's controlling an AT-AT. So it kind of
it's an ATSC
was an
variant
ATSC
anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But anyways,
not
it cut to that, and it just felt like after the characters find out that, oh my god, we just got the entire resistance pretty much wiped out. The big explosion, and it cuts to it just took away. I enjoyed it. I'm like, yeah, BB-8 go, but then I was just like, they kind of took away the gravitas of the situation.
And then we get right back into the gravitas afterwards. I agree. That was not my favorite moment of the film, but it does get back into the gravitas. And, and then we still have one of the most haunting and beautiful images in the film of heroism and sacrifice coming up.
Actually, I don't think that scene works at all, but that's a completely different point. Going back to the way that the characters fucked up, one of my big problems with this movie is that maybe I would have felt that if the impact from that very first battle scene was more prevalent in the movie. But the fact that in between then and Poe and Finn and Rose completely fucking up and destroying the entire, fleet, in between then we had Princess Leia surviving space just cause. We have Finn and Rose surviving their execution essentially just cause. There's a point where even though you're losing a lot of lives, I don't feel any gravity towards it because I know Finn's gonna be fine, Rose is gonna be fine, Rey is gonna be fine. All the main characters are gonna be completely unscathed. Nothing is gonna.
But the problem is that I felt that way about
but they're not
the trios
unscathed.
in the original trilogies.
All of them are completely unscathed by anything. Princess Leia survives.
Except for what about Luke Skywalker?
Well, we knew he was gonna die. Han Solo died last time.
I did not know that. I did not know he was going to die. That was complete surprise for me.
They're gonna kill off all three of this trilogy. I knew that coming in. One would die every movie. Never occurred to me
that he would die.
I didn't think Leia would be the last one, but
no, I completely agree with Haley. This was predictable as hell. They were gonna kill off the main three over the course of the trilogy. For me,
it was supposed to end the Skywalker story.
Yeah, it is.
But
Because
also how well, I mean, the whole set piece around the end of Luke Skywalker, I think, is one of the best stretches in the entire Star Wars saga.
I actually hated all
I think
of it.
that moment is the moment where it nuked the fridge.
Yep. Like where he comes out of the explosion and he's just dusting his shoulder off like he's Jay-Z was just a little too ridiculous for me and didn't fit him as a character. But
there's a twist to it. And that whole scene is about trying to set the audience off about wait, something's up here.
Okay,
and it's also some great character stuff going on in there in what Luke is there to do, and
it felt like I was watching the wrong sci-fi series.
Yeah, exactly. It really
like astral projection. Like that's one of you guys mentioned it earlier. They had technology back in the prequels and even the original trilogy that like they cast themselves.
They developed the technology to do something that they can do themselves, but at great physical danger and loss. Yeah, but I'm fine with that.
I would have been okay with it if it had happened at least one time in either the shows or the movies. Like one time where an astral projection happened.
How dare The Last Jedi surprise you and do something different?
But Loren,
the thing is, this is after flying through space. It was too much.
It was too
much.
Pick one. Exactly.
Astral projection or flying through space.
And
honestly, I could have taken one of those.
I loved them both. I think they were both fantastic. And honestly, astral projection Luke, again, that is an incredible scene that does so much for Luke's character arc. It's him coming to terms with his identity as a legend that he has been running so long and so hard for. He went to that planet to die, and now he came back to give people, to do a few things, not just to give hope and to help a different kind of resistance get born, but also to try to redeem his failures as a teacher. I think it's massively important that the first thing that they say that Luke says to Kylo is a callback to the first lesson he has with Rey. It's amazing that everything you just said was wrong. He is still trying to teach him. He is trying to move the needle on him and bring him back and make up for his own mistakes. And that's a fantastic character moment, and it leads to one of the most operatic lightsaber duels we've had in the entire saga, and it's gorgeous and fantastic.
What I would have loved more is like when Kylo... Sorry.
Yeah, we had better lightsaber duels in the prequels. We also had a much better emotional lightsaber duel with Luke battling over his own identity between him and Darth Vader. Also, I think that twice, but I think the astral projection thing, even though it does end up killing him, is actually kind of a fucking waste, because the fact that he is completely impervious because he's an astral projection kind of...
He's not impervious. He's dying.
Yeah, but like, how does that lightsaber work? Like, that's the biggest jumping the shark thing that it does. Like,
he never does anything with the lightsaber. He never strikes another lightsaber with his lightsaber. He doesn't. It's for show. It's pageantry.
I could understand if he were dead, because, like, that's when Force Ghosts appear.
Oh, if he was having a lightsaber battle when he was dead, that'd be even worse.
But also, I think
I wish he had been there.
Stretching his physical limitations in a way that you could tell during the fight, and not just as a gimmick after the fact to make it seem more important than it was in that moment.
And Haley, I totally agree with you.
Trying to get there, and him actually being there, and him physically struggling, and not just wiping the dust off his shoulder as like showmanship, would say a lot more to his character. The entire way that they pulled it off and then tried to pull the rug under your feet after the fact to be like, oh, by the way, he wasn't there. Oh, but it still killed him because the Force was too, like, that was too much, and it doesn't work with him, and it doesn't make it seem hard.
Mm-hmm. What I would have loved to have seen is a throwback to A New Hope. When Kylo like slices through Luke, his like cape just falls, his cloak just falls, and it's Luke joining the Force. Like, that would have been, I would have been okay with that. Like, I know everybody harps on The Force Awakens for being too much like A New Hope, but like, honestly, I would rather that than this astral projection.
I completely agree.
How are you?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
That would have been a much better, like, moment. Because it means Kylo really doesn't get his satisfaction. And either way, Kylo doesn't get his satisfaction of really killing Luke.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, I completely agree
it still gets
with
that point across, and Luke would have been there. So background to Poe a little bit from he has like there's like a comic series about him, and I think it also talks about it in the Journey to Force Awakens. Luke and Leia are friends with Poe Dameron's parents. And this is like a nitpick of mine. This is a total nitpick of mine. But when like Luke just walks past Poe, I'm just like, you're not gonna notice your like one of your best friends as kids. Like, that sucked. And then Poe just kind of looked at him like, oh my god, it's a legend. But like, they actually had history together, and that would have been nice to like have just like a little nod, like, yo, what's up? Especially after the dust your shoulder off moment, like just a little nod of recognition. But
which, for the record, is cool.
Yeah, I would have just appreciated it, but it's just a nitpick, not important.
I think that it is kind of important because we do live in an MCU era where, you know, you can cater to the people who don't know anything about it outside of the movies, and you can also cater to the hardcore fans who know everything about it.
Right.
Well, yeah. And when you start stretching the rules, and in this case, you know, I think there's a big difference between bending the rules and jumping the shark.
Yeah.
And like, I think that, you know, when you set up rules in your universe, audiences have limits on what they can believe. Yes, it's a fictional world. I understand that. But at the same time, you know, you don't just automatically have characters like, you know, doing things that you think are impossible without there being an explanation. Like, you know, take The Matrix, for example. If Neo was doing the sort of things that he was doing on later in the film, at the very beginning, the stakes would be lowered and there wouldn't be a sense of progression with his character. Like, if he was stopping bullets at the very beginning of the movie, what are the stakes in that movie? We already know that he's the strongest character around. I mean, Superman is one of the franchises where you literally have to make the story about other characters in order to raise the stakes.
That's not true at all, because, you know, the 77 Superman was about not his powers but his place in the world. And, you know, the good parts of the Matrix sequels, it's not about how powerful he is, it's about his place in this world, and is he really an individual after all? It is possible, but you have to take a more a less physically combative viewpoint of it, and it's not impossible to work with. And I think this Last Jedi is a film with a great deal of emotional stakes and physical stakes, as we see the rebellion pretty much destroyed. No, not pretty much, completely destroyed. The First Order's also destroyed. Everything's just burned down. There's no more Jedi as we knew them before. You know, this is a movie that does break everything, but for productive reasons. And
so
for
I think
thematic ones.
I think what I'm so stuck on with what they did with the Force in this movie is that we live in a world where Superman exists. We live in a world where MCU exists. And it has these characters that are larger than life and have all of these powers. And it's hard and I've been noticing this when I'm watching, like, I just caught up on Legends of Tomorrow. And, like, they have to create all of these limitations. Oh, okay, even better example, The Flash. Like, he can go up against you know, the biggest of the bad and be fine, and then get, you know, punched and knocked out by a robber. Like, it's like they don't understand how to write characters that have these larger than life powers, who should be able to take care of everything. And I like Star Wars because it kind of grounded it. It set rules and limitations. And in this movie, it just went past it. It blew it out of the waters. These characters have all the power in the world, and they know how to use it immediately. There is no learning curve. And I think that's what I'm having a problem with. And I mean, it might be what a couple other people are having an issue with in this movie. It's just, it made it too fantastical. Like with Luke's astral projection, Leia's flying through space, Rey not having to train whatsoever to do anything.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm having an issue with.
Yeah, I
But
completely.
it's not about training to. It's not about training to have the power. It's about training on what to do with it, and that's what this movie adds to it.
Not
there
what
is
to.
no difference between Rey as a character at the beginning of the movie and Rey as a character at the end of the movie. Other than, oh, well, now I'm not as interested in knowing who my parents are. Other than that one small element that nobody cares about because we all know the answer anyway, there is no difference between her as a character at the beginning and the end because she doesn't grow. She doesn't learn anything emotionally.
Yes, she does. She learns to stop hero worshipping.
She was never a hero worshiper in The Force Awakens.
Oh, hell yes, she was. She literally is introduced playing with a rebel helmet and like reading about the Jedi and being so in awe about, oh, you know Luke Skywalker? Oh my gosh. And she knows what the Millennium Falcon is. She's read it. No, that film is all about, Force Awakens is all about
she does not know what the
Millennium
Millennium Falcon is. She literally
She said it's that jump.
She knew what it was. She didn't know what it looked like.
She didn't know what it looks like because that information wasn't there for her, but she knew these legends and these stories better than a lot of the people around her. No, she was absolutely a fangirl. She
doesn't know what the Force is. She knows all this shit about Jedis, and she has no idea what the Force is.
She had heard about the Force. She knew about the Force. She
just
didn't know exactly what it was because that information had been suppressed, and she was doing the best she could.
Oh my.
But no, and she goes to Luke Skywalker. She knows exactly who Luke Skywalker is. She geeks out over Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens. She's a hero worshiper, and in The Last Jedi, that hero worship is confronted and broken down. And she comes to the whole film was about, well, you know, all this hero worship, all the empty nostalgia that the fans are having needs to be burned down, and
I kind of agree
do
with
something
him.
new.
It's not the whole film, but Rose has that same moment when she meets Finn.
That's true, but that was a lot better, I think.
She recognizes. She's just like, "Oh my god, I'm meeting my hero," and then she's like, "Well, never meet your heroes." After she electrocutes him, so like.
But that was a much more effective scene than what was going on with Rey and Luke.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with that too.
And she also learns, even though Finn isn't this perfect deity like she imagines, she learns how to work with him and how to be better, like working with him, but also how she can help him be better too. There is so much more growth and development with Rose.
Arc. You're talking about a character.
Yes, I am talking about a character arc with a character who was introduced in this movie. This did not happen with Rey the way it happened with Rose.
Yeah, but Finn had his own character arc too, while not as important as maybe Rey's should have been, or as poignant as Kylo's. Like, he did have a character arc. He needed, and I said this earlier, he needed to learn to make choices for himself, and that the resistance was worth fighting for. And he has that moment where he's like, okay, I'm going to take one for the team, and I'm going to throw myself into this cannon. And hopefully everybody has time to escape. And then Rose stops him. And this is the part I hate so much. Probably one of my least favorite parts of the movie is like when she kisses him, but she has a really good line. She says, you know, you don't do this, you don't get back at them with hate. You save for, I can't remember the first part, but she says you save it for love.
That's
and
a
that
moment
was great.
I did wrestle with too.
It was a great message, but at the same time, she knew him for 20 hours. And
on him.
Yeah, and he looks like John Boyega, you know?
John Boyega is amazing.
Yeah, I would totally.
Exactly.
I would fall in love with him too in 20
him.
hours, but I also wouldn't Mac on him first thing.
Yeah, exactly. They, even though they had some growth,
yes, I would. I would totally Mac on him as soon as possible.
Dude, and not in those high stake life and death situations. I'm sorry.
And I think that she had a concussion, and I'm going to excuse it if in the next movie. I will excuse it in the next movie if she says what happened She goes, "Oh my God, did I kiss you? Oh, gross. I'm sorry."
Yeah,
She was like,
that would
You
be.
know, okay.
"I have a
Let me tell you the
concussion."
part.
Um,
Let me tell you the part of that scene that I wrestled with. I actually think, you know, if he had sacrificed himself, that would have been a very interesting conclusion to his arc, because he starts off The Last Jedi pretty much
Oh,
in
I
the
would have
same
been
place where he
pissed.
was at the beginning. No, because he starts off as this person who's literally running away from a fight, and now he's going
Well,
straight
and it's
towards
also
it.
he's very
And my other
selfish in
thing
it
is,
too.
he is very selfish. But then you know, throwing something to that cannon might have saved some damn lives. And then I realized, but that's still an act of selfishness, because what's been going on in this is saying we have no resources left. We don't have any starfighters left. We don't have any soldiers left. And you're going to throw your life away because you want to be a big damn hero and you want to be a legend.
Mm-hmm.
We need
And
you alive and
it
fighting.
would have been a worthless sacrifice anyways, because no one died because of that cannon going off.
Yeah.
It's debatable. I think it would have been nice if we had a line saying, no, if you threw yourself in there, would not stop the cannon fire. That actually would have been a nice little thing to have. It's a small thing.
I think she said that, or Poe says that when they're all returning. He's like, "It's too late. It's active. It won't have it. It won't have any. It won't do anything." And Finn says, "I have to try.
I have to try." And that's a nice
I was
moment. But
concerned.
again,
It was
there's
my
a
little baby.
selfishness to it. There's a selfishness to that, wanting to be a hero, wanting to sacrifice yourself when they need you alive. And it is a part of what's going on throughout the rest of the film. And I wrestled with that moment, how it was executed, but ultimately I'm with it.
I do have to say, though, I'm proud of them. Okay, I shouldn't even have to be proud of them, but like I kind of saw it coming when Finn was going at it, and they kept cutting to Rose. I was like, "Oh my God, they're about to make her fly into it ahead of him." Like that's what I was expecting. I was expecting her to like go sacrifice herself because she thought Finn was more important to the Resistance, and you know, luckily she ran herself.
Oh, that would have been so tragic.
I would have been so mad, but they didn't go there, which is great. They didn't go there.
Well, there's a lot of places they... Okay, can I talk... I need to go pretty soon, but can I talk about one thing that I like without being... You could talk afterwards, obviously, all of you, but like I want to finish this idea and get out of my head and articulate it. So that throne room scene, what I really like about it... Okay, so in Return of the Jedi, once Darth Vader throws the Emperor down the pit, that scene is over. His redemption is complete. Because, you know, he's made up his decision. And when Ben Solo kills Snoke, it's actually the beginning of the scene, because we realize the reasons he's done that are very different from the reasons Darth Vader did what he did. And he ultimately did it for power. And the film has done for me anyway, not for you guys, for Ren and Kira, because I know the film didn't work for you, but for me, the film did a wonderful job balancing whether or not he's being honest with his intentions or not, and what those intentions really are. And realizing that this riff was not done after the reference, and it was going to build and innovate and go in a completely different direction, was one of the most satisfying moments. It was worth killing off Snoke, who honestly was incredibly boring in The Force Awakens. They made him into someone a little more interesting. I'm a little sad they killed him off right away, but it would have ultimately been a further rehash of Return of the Jedi. And I'm glad that they're forcing remix auteur J.J. Abrams to do something else. That poor guy, I don't know what he's going to do after this.
I have to say, I kind of agree with you.
Wait, apparently J.J. Abrams is going to be making a live-action adaptation of Your Name.
He's producing it, and the screenwriters already announced, don't worry, they're going to be Asians.
That's not the problem with doing an American live-action remake of Your Name. That is not the issue.
No, but it is a problem that Hollywood hasn't figured out how to do. But what I'm saying is JJ's fucked, because Rian Johnson for me, Rian Johnson is a much smarter filmmaker than JJ is, and I like JJ. Now, I know you like The Force Awakens reservations, and you like it more than The Last Jedi, but his trick of recycling moments from previous things, he doesn't have that option anymore because they went through Empire and Return of the Jedi in this film, and I don't know what he's going to do, that poor bastard.
Well, first of all, he's probably not going to write it.
He is going to write it. Also,
What?
can we get 3 cheers for Snoke's Gustav Klimt's gold robe, which is just absolutely gorgeous, and an amazing blood red set that looks like something out of Suspiria.
It looks so cheap.
I thought it was.
And
I thought it was amazing.
the room was great, but the
bathrobe, like he's freaking the dude from The Big Lebowski.
He wasn't a dude from The Big Lebowski. He was this opulent bauble out of a Gustav Klimt painting.
There's a difference between opulence and cheap. Like,
well, you know,
it looked like he got it from like the market and not like off the runway. Well, if you know,
it worked for me.
What a waste of potential when you have Andy Serkis, the best motion capture in the market. And
you know what the good thing is? You can have him play another character and no one will care.
Exactly, which I hope they do. But, like, you know, at the same time, it was like, you know, what was Snoke's arc? Like, Snoke didn't have an arc in the movie, and I get that
he was there to be an echo of Emperor Palpatine. Like, that was his whole point.
He was, and he's a better Emperor Palpatine, actually, because, you know, yes, he was. No. Look at what he says and what he does and how he acts. Emperor Palpatine, he cackles about his plans and all that, but I understand how Snoke. I cannot believe I'm saying I like Snoke more than Palpatine. I thought he was horrible in Force Awakens, but in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, but like
in Last Jedi, I believe his manipulations. I understand the method of manipulations. I love the way he's keeping everyone in check and controlling them. I think that's really sharp writing.
But can we talk about how Emperor Palpatine would never be dumb enough to keep a lightsaber that close to him when he's
actually talking? He did. He kept that lightsaber right next to him. They
holding Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and then he was like constantly tempting him. He was like, you know, good, give in to your anger and all that kind of stuff. And that scene worked a lot better than anything Snoke did in this scene. Yeah. You know, talking about Kylo Ren's raw, unfiltered power.
It was all setting itself up to, like, I was like, oh my god, Kylo's about to kill him. Kylo's gonna kill him, and then it happened.
And how interesting is it that we've had that moment of the underling overthrowing the overlord, but for completely different reasons, and now this unprepared, he still acts like a child at the end of this movie, is now in control of this vast empire. There's some interesting stuff to do in the next film.
I agree with you that this movie actually did I did not like Kylo at all in Force Awakens. I thought he was a petulant child. I still think he's a petulant child. But this movie actually, like, it gave me a sense of, I actually cared about his story. It was the most interesting thing in Last Jedi. And I liked the back and forth. Like, I wasn't sure which way Kylo was going to go. I was like, oh my god, he's actually going to fight with Rey and, like, you know, be on the good side. What? But my biggest complaint I have with this movie, is besides the whatever word I'm trying to say there, is the dynamic of Kylo and Hux and the First Order. Who in the hell?
Megatron and Starscream?
Who funded this? Who supports this? These are two petulant children running some sort of knockoff Galactic Empire regime thing. And it's like they read a textbook in 5th grade one day and it's like, I want to rule the world. And this is their version of it.
American politics today.
I found it very believable when we have that same guy tweeting every day about how great a president he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different from what America, but also plenty of other countries all over the world experience all the time. It's not like Hux is any different than Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un.
Right, and I understand that, but at the same time, I can't understand how they just came out of nowhere in the galaxy. Like, they don't even have a planet that they originated from. Like, and at least, like, okay, in our current situation, like, you know, this is all about the history of these countries and what it's led to. So, like, Barack Obama being elected, you know, as our first black president, that ultimately led to Donald Trump's rise to fame and, like, his subsequent win as president. So, like, I can see where this would happen, but at the same time, who would trust that with Hux? Like, who was he before this?
I think one of the biggest mistakes about The Force Awakens, the biggest problem is that they do such a poor job establishing this new republic and this new version of the Empire. I always had a theory that it was like the remnant that sort of grew into this over 30 years. But I agree. That was JJ's business. He should have figured that out. The Last Jedi had other fish to fry. I wish they could have found a way to flesh it out a little more. They didn't. I agree. That is an issue for me in the world building of these films.
Yeah, and if you're going to build on the Rebel Alliance, it would have been nice to see you build on the Empire as well. I mean, sorry, the Last Order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up something that I actually love in this movie. And this is like this sort of like expanding on what we know about the Force that I was actually completely in support of. If this was like the only time in the movie they did it, it would have been completely perfect. But the Yoda scene was entirely perfect from beginning to end.
They used the puppet.
They
used the puppet.
The puppet was phenomenal. The effects for Yoda were great. Out of all of the things that Frank Oz will not come back for, at least he came back for Yoda. Thank God.
I literally cried in the theaters.
It was so good.
I still can't believe that Frank Oz won't come back to Fozzie Bear just because he made a fart joke, as if Fozzie was above that.
No, there was the entire Muppets TV show that was awful. Like, no, don't do that.
I remember Frank Oz throwing shade at Fozzie doing a fart joke in the
No, there were
actually
a lot
pretty
of
good
other
Disney
problems.
movie.
No, there were a lot of other problems. But
well, without getting into
but in this,
the Yoda scene is fantastic.
It's so
beautiful.
Perfect.
It sums up everything the movie's about, what it's trying to say, and you know, it means something that you have this 900-plus-year-old Jedi, basically the stereotypical Jedi, the most iconic Jedi in this franchise history, saying, "Yeah, fuck it, we fucked up a lot. You know, it's your world now. Do something else with it." And I think that's a fantastic. That is, I think, honestly, what The Force Awakens should have been philosophically. I think for me, all the frustrations I had with Force Awakens, a film I still like, was it's playing it so damn safe. And does The Last Jedi take risks that don't work? You know, yeah, I'm willing to admit. Like, clearly, seeing audience reactions, those risks, Space Leia and the Force and all that, works for me, but it doesn't work for a lot of other people. But I would rather have a Star Wars movie taking risks and failing than playing it so safe that it becomes about empty fan service. And there is
I kind of agree.
You know, and look, and look, the Star. I'm gonna say this. I need to leave in like 2 minutes. You know, Star Wars has always been like about. All right, the original trilogy was about wonder and showing you new things within a framework you could vaguely recognize. And, you know, it's an inquisitive film. It's an adventurous film, the original 1977 Star Wars. And The Force Awakens isn't. It's new Coke. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they shit the bed before. We're going to give you exactly what you think you want. But it wasn't true to this adventurous, independent spirit of Star Wars. Whether we like the prequels or not, one thing we always forget about them is that they are actually independent films. George Lucas paid for them out of his own pocket. Fox only distributed them. They are independent films, and they have an independent spirit, whether or not you like them or not. And what I think Last Jedi did was it returned a sense of inquisitiveness, questioning, and adventure to Star Wars. Did it all work for me? No, it worked for me more than it worked for you, but I'd much rather it attempt to be magical and mysterious again than play it completely safe.
I don't think there was anything mysterious about it, though. I feel like, except for the Yoda scene and the opening battle scene, everything was super predictable. I could see it coming from miles away. None of it was mysterious.
Yeah, it has so many. This is a film with so many red herrings. It has that whole Canto Bite sequence that we think is going to pay off, and it doesn't. And we think, Luke has a key line. This is not going to go the way you think. And we think it's an echo of Empire Strikes Back, but it goes to somewhere else. And we have that setup of the X-Wing in the water. We think, at some point it's going to get raised up, but it doesn't because it's going somewhere else. We have these echoes, but they mean different things. And Johnson had a willingness to take some risks with it. Now, is it an experimental film? Hell no. But it was in the realm of mega budget blockbusters. I found it to be very meta and a bit subversive. It doesn't break some of the rules, yes, but I think it's productive. After Force Awakens, which again I like, was sucking the franchise's dick so hard, seeing Luke's lightsaber, this really fetishized object, be literally destroyed in what I was cathartic, actually. As much as I love those old films, they are not about being comfortable and familiar. They're about adventure and venturing out on your own. And that's what I think The Last Jedi does well.
It's amazing. Everything you just said was completely wrong.
I see what you did there.
Okay, that was a fantastic burn. I know no needles are going to be moved tonight, either on my side or your side.
Mostly,
and I do need to leave.
There, I just have to say,
I will say,
too good to not say.
I have to say, like, what it boils down to for me, and I think the casual audience, is that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed sitting through it, and I will not mind adding it to my collection and sitting through it during a Star Wars marathon around Christmas. I will, every film has flaws. Star Wars is not, special from that. Every Star Wars film has a flaw or two or several.
Absolutely.
But I still watch the prequels. I still watch the original trilogy. I love Rogue One. I will add Last Jedi gladly to my list. Do I expect more and think they can do better this time around? Hell yeah, I do. But, for what we got, it's okay. It's okay.
I gotta say, I've never been so relieved for a movie to be over since I saw Avatar, where I was just like,
damn,
can
hate.
Over?
I need to show you some other films. You need to see Rubber if you want to know what it's like to wait to die hoping a film's going to end.
No, because at least it's not. I mean, I thought the movie was a train wreck and kind of shitting on a lot of things I really love about Star Wars. But most of it was just, it was so over bloated, and it wasn't developing the core ideas of these themes that had so much potential to them and just squandering it, that I was just like, okay, you know what? By the time we got to Red Velvet Planet, I was like, can this just be over? I'm at a point where you're not going to salvage this and you're not going to make it better. Can it just be done? But I do think the opening sequence was awesome. I thought the Yoda scene was completely perfect from beginning to end, with Yoda, with Luke, with the one thing of the blue ghost actually being able to deal with the physical world was something I could totally buy into.
Actually, if you watch the Clone Wars, they kind of explain that.
Well, I don't think that it needs to be explained because it worked really, really well.
Yeah, but if you do feel a sense of reluctance to believe it, they deal with that in the last season.
Okay, but I totally don't. Yeah. I bought into it. I thought that moment had the perfect amount of humor and sincerity and seriousness and modern uptake on the good versus evil theme of Star Wars. And if more of the movie was like that, I would have been so happy, but I feel like there wasn't enough of that to really hold on to in this movie. I thought most of it was meandering and pointless. But we do have that scene. We do have one last really, really, really good scene with General Leia. And I don't like all of it, but I like a lot of Luke Skywalker wrestling with his emotions and not really wanting to be a part of it anymore, because I like Darth Luke. And a return to that was really awesome and refreshing. And I do like how they developed Kylo Ren, and he's not this whining emo boy like he was in the last movie, and he's not just this, stick figure of an evil character. Well, yeah, but I mean, there are a lot of good actors in Star Wars. A lot of it doesn't come down to the writing.
I feel, I don't want to interrupt you, but I feel he matured as an actor between films. Anyway, go on.
I agree. Adam Driver was a lot more easy to buy into in this movie than he was in The Force Awakens as a bad guy. But he's also much more developed than the two-dimensional stick figures that are Hux and Snoke. There's a lot more to bounce off with his character. Like, this was an irredeemable film, but it needed to play a lot more to its strengths than into its weaknesses, which I think it did.
The thing that I will say is I really got frustrated with the whole aspect with the kids, because it was essentially adding a Target commercial at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thematically relevant Target commercial, but yeah, it's a Target commercial.
Say again?
It's a thematically relevant Target commercial, but I felt I had that same uneasiness. But I shouldn't interrupt you. I've talked way too much already.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It was one of those things where it's like you have the first movie and it ended with Luke and Rey, and in this movie it ends with these kids and this secret rebel ring, and I'm sure Target sells it because I mean
I haven't seen it yet. I work there.
I have checked. I have not seen it yet, but it will come out, and my girlfriend has already requested that I buy her one.
Okay, but like what I will say with that is, that scene could have had weight if you establish those kids as characters. But the fact that you just have them as tertiary characters and the fact that the movie ends with them really rubbed me off the wrong way.
Yeah.
Just where it's placed in the movie.
Yeah. I never liked it.
I could see that possibly be an end credits thing, like after the credits are done and then you do that little moment.
The last thing Disney Star Wars needs is to start doing the end credits bullshit the MCU does. I agree it's a Target commercial, but this is in a film about destroying the past. You need to look towards the future, and the idea that there's a next generation. We don't know if they're going to be Jedi or not, but they're being affected by these legends, hopefully in a way that can be molded towards positive ends. This is a film that ends on a really dark note. The rebellion is reduced to essentially as many people can be stuffed into the Millennium Falcon. And it's not even the rebellion anymore. It's not the resistance anymore. We don't know what form it's going to take. There's a lot more ambiguity in this ending that we've seen in many of the Star Wars films. And to know that there's something good in the future, we don't know what it is, but there is a sense that out there are people who care. And they're the downtrodden people who are shit on, who believe in the resistance. I thought there was something interesting in there. I think it fits in thematically. It's still a Target commercial. I agree with that. They are going to sell that ring.
Honestly, what it reminded me more than anything else was actually Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Which I've never seen. I need to watch more of his videos. He got some very interesting people to direct those videos in the 80s.
He did, but like the kids in this movie just remind me way too much of the kids from that movie, and that is not a compliment. You can make
honestly, I thought of this
work, and there was like no effort to make it interesting at all, other than just you feel bad for little kids.
Well, it's not just that. It reminded me of one of those World War II movies where we see the French underground and you realize it's more than just the soldiers who are executing Nazis. There's actually like the general civilian populace is sympathetic to your cause. This is the first time in any of the Star Wars movies where we saw civilians supporting the Alliance, which kind of helps the verisimilitude of the world a little bit. Is it perfect? No. I do think
Is it even any good? No.
Actually, we saw that in Rogue One. We saw civilians supporting the Alliance.
I keep blocking out that movie. I would love to be able to see the movie you see in Rogue One. I would have loved to like Rogue One. For me, everything that's interesting about that character is off screen. The first scene's pretty good, but it's just so empty and full of empty fan service. I hate the weird grave robbing of Peter Cushing. Everything Darth Vader does is completely unnecessary. They do give him a good entrance. And, you know, the whole thing about, like, we need to have a movie to explain why there's a shaft that you could shoot a torpedo down is pretty unnecessary to me, because I never really thought that was a plot hole. So I never
but
thought
a lot
that
of
would
people
be
did.
The Star Wars fan base has been saying that for decades. Just because you didn't question that is a thing that has been questioned by Star Wars fans for decades in a big
it's something that belittles Star Wars.
But why? I mean, look, it is hard. Like, maybe it's a little inconvenient, but first up, the military-industrial complex fucks up building their big machines all the goddamn time. Two, you know, that little exhaust port is kind of hard to get to. It's an almost impossible shot. Quote from the movie: "That shot's impossible even for a computer." And it's surrounded by hundreds of towers, hundreds of TIE fighters. That is a protected thing. Even if you get to it to make the one a bajillion shot, you still have to get to it. You know, there's some obstacles to get there. It's not like I never thought that was a plot hole, but the movie just never worked for me dramatically. It just never had a character I thought was interesting. I wish I could see the movie you choose see in Rogue One.
Well, to be fair,
I loved Rogue One.
Much better stakes than any of the saga movies, because guess what? Everybody can't just do whatever they want all the time. People actually have to work hard, and there are real stakes because, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Rogue One, like, definitely don't listen, but people die. Like, the main characters that are the whole
they were characters. They were cardboard cutouts that were not characters, had no charm and no interest. And you know what? I don't really, you know, I like the sort of romantic zippiness of Star Wars. I like, it's elevated, and now it's a little more emotionally great, but I like that there's still the DNA of Flash Gordon in it. And
I don't disagree with that at all.
I don't.
But
and Rogue One didn't have that.
I don't agree with you that they're cardboard cutouts, except for probably the pilot, who was literally only the pilot. Like, that is a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, kind of a waste of Riz Ahmed, because he's a great actor.
I agree with that, but
he's a great actor.
He is a great actor, and it was a waste of him as a character. But I think literally everyone else in the lineup is a 5-star, completely developed character. And
Diego Luna's character was fantastic.
He's so fantastic, and I heard so many people complain that there needed to be a scene of him sitting down and spouting off exposition about what terrible things he's done, and I completely disagree with that, because anything you say
implied.
It is implied, but that is actual mystery of character that I think completely works, because you know where he's coming from and you know how he feels, and you don't need the specifics to sort of unveil this mystery and know everything about him. He does have surprises. The whole thing with him, like, is he going to kill Mads Mikkelsen character or is he not, was actually fraught with tension. And I didn't know how that was going to end up.
But it would have been nice if I could see anything in that sequence. It was so badly shot and lit. I will say, you know, look, again, I think the real question here is there ever going to be star peace between us about these movies? And look, you know, we didn't talk, you know, I did like Benicio del Toro's character, even though
I did too.
I will sign off with a line of his because I do need to leave. Am I wrong?
Okay.
Maybe. All right, I'm out.
All right.
It's good talking to you, man.
Bye.
So this has been a really interesting conversation because I really do like the fact that we were all coming at the film with different angles.
Yeah, just because we have disagreements, I don't think like means that there's disrespect towards people's opinions.
Mm-mm.
And it's good to like actually talk about it and deconstruct it, because I think that what people like about The Last Jedi are some of the thematic elements that I also like. I think it sort of depends on whether or not the execution of those themes make or break the movie for you.
Yeah, like I think it's a film full of a lot of good elements and ideas, and I would have preferred a much more cohesive narrative that strung those together. And instead, we got isolated moments that feel more like we're watching a third of a TV season than
Yeah.
a full narrative movie.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Death Note animated movie, where I don't like with Death Note, like if you haven't seen the TV show, then the movie makes no sense, and if you have seen the TV show, then the movie is just pointless. I don't think that, like, one of the things that I don't like about the new saga is like none of the movies stand up on their own. I feel like with the original trilogy, you can watch them out of order and it still makes sense, and there's enough charm and interest and character and story to really draw you into them. And I think we're in an age with franchise movies where you can do that really, really well. Like the new Planet of the Apes reboot, I feel like you can watch any of those movies alone and get a lot out of it. And I don't feel like you can do that with episode 7 and episode 8. I feel like you can do that with Rogue One, which is a large part of the appeal for me, is having a completely off to the side storyline. I think works really well, and I like the fact that they developed the character and the story enough that you can buy into it, whether or not you know Star Wars or whether or not you know episode 4.
Yeah, but I don't mind franchises at all. Like,
No,
I love Marvel. Surprisingly, my favorite Marvel movies are sequels, and not the originals. Not the originals, but the first movie, which are standalones. The first movie in all of Marvel's movies are standalone films, essentially. And my favorite Marvel movies, Civil War. No, not Civil War. Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie. That you need context, like for Bucky's character, and you need context for where Cap's at right now. So like you have to watch the first one. You have to watch Avengers. So like I don't mind franchises. Sequels can be great if you know how to make them. And right now, I think we're in this. I think what's wrong with The Last Jedi is that it didn't know how, like not Civil War, I keep saying that. Winter Soldier can stand on its own. It has this completely different element than all of the other Marvel movies because it feels like a spy thriller. It knew what it was doing. And that's why I think it's my favorite. Last Jedi didn't. I don't think they knew what they were doing.
Well, yeah, and the fact that they introduced so many new elements that have not been in Star Wars and, you know, raised the powers and all that stuff and lowered the stakes. Where do you go from this? Because that's kind of like the moment that you had, we mentioned Superman before. It's kind of like the moment in the first Superman movie where Superman spins around the world, and instead of like having to deal with the consequences of only saving like one, you know, only saving Lois Lane or, you know, saving like a crowd full of people, he fixes both. That's kind of how it felt. And then it's like, now that you've established these powers, you can't go back. You can't limit the powers without
There's a term for that. And I'm forgetting it, but there's a term for that. It's like the crux that fixes everything. But you sacrifice your story to do it.
Like the Deus Ex Machina, or is that what you're referring to?
I think so. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's just like this random plot device. Like, oh, we've been sitting on this, and it's going to fix everything. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, and this is Deus Ex Machina, the movie.
Yeah, and you know, like you said before, one of the things that I've loved about Star Wars is it is fantastical, but unlike most fantasy, it's grounded, which which makes it more like a sci-fi story with fantasy elements instead of what it seems to have turned into now, which is a fantasy story with sci-fi elements.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't know where it sits, and it doesn't know the genre that it's in. It doesn't understand it.
Yeah, and Casey and I have been talking about this a lot, but like one of the biggest issues that I have with the movie is it seems like most of the movie is just marketing for toys.
Yeah, like it feels so much. I mean, I'm sure that there were definitely a lot of thoughts about that going into The Force Awakens and Rogue One. I mean, the only Star Wars toys I have bought from any of those movies was actually, the only Star Wars toys I have actually bought for myself was from Rogue One. I'm sure that there was a lot of marketing, like, going into the pre-production, but you don't feel it all over the place like you feel it with this movie. We're like,
the only toys
is just for selling toys and nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really buy toys, but I did buy my brother a X-Wing and Death Star hover drone.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother does not use it whatsoever, but it's actually like a really cool toy. And like, I wish they would focus more on toys like that and not stuffed animals.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, the entire reason for there being crystal critters, as they're called in the movie, is just to sell more Pokemon-style toys.
Those were super cute.
They were cute, but they did not.
Yeah, and plus, this is Star Wars. You don't have crystal critters. You have a name for them.
Right. And does anyone know the name for them?
No, they are called crystal critters in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like, there's not even like an official name for them. So that's great.
As much as I hate the name Porg, at least that's a term that I could see being in a Star Wars movie, not crystal critters.
Yeah, I just think that was something they named it on the spot. They didn't put any thought into that.
I would say that honestly, I would be a lot more willing to forgive a lot of the script because of the quick turnaround if we hadn't seen better movies with that same timeline. You know what I mean? Like, I can forgive a movie for having to rush because we have to put out a new Star Wars movie every year. Go, 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 go. Well, Rogue One had that same problem. Much, much better results because of it. They rewrote the script halfway through production and refilmed a lot of it, and it works.
It does.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot less willing to forgive this movie for having the same limitations.
And I understand that they have set a shooting schedule that is very hard to make good things from. I mean, from script to filming, I don't know how long they're taking, but they certainly need to spread a little bit more time because
I think it's 2 years. I'm not sure, but I think it's 2 years.
That's incredibly fast.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous, especially with how many special effects are put into that. Like, you have to start filming like right away. Which
have either of you read the Hunger Games series? Okay,
I've seen
that's actually a great example of like a series that definitely suffers from being pushed by their producers or their book editors to come out with the next thing to get it on the shelves faster, because Mockingjay was a mess, the third book in the trilogy. I read it in a day. I couldn't understand what was going on. I had to read it several times to understand what was happening, and it was a complete mess. And that was because Suzanne Collins was completely rushed in writing it. And you can tell her writing was rushed, and it feels that way with Star Wars. It feels so rushed, but then you get this bloated movie that was not edited whatsoever. And I think that's because it suffers from that. They didn't have time to edit it. They didn't know how to cut some of the unnecessary storyline out. and it really it hurts.
It should be the longest Star Wars movie ever.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, that was my little anecdote.
So, I think we're going to wrap up now. My takeaway is I really think that this movie was a disappointment, and I really scared for the franchise going forward now that we have established certain rules and powers that weren't there before.
Not that we establish rules, but that we establish that it's okay to break all the rules that are set up, no matter what.
Yeah, in ways that aren't just like slightly altering them, but in ways that completely jump the shark. And you're gonna need a lot of lore and like
retconning to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm trying to think how many comic books, how many books are going to have to be written just to make this make sense and also be something that isn't unforgivable.
The problem, though, is that this movie takes place in a span of like 18 hours. So there has not a lot of explaining in between the scenes of what's going on that'll help it.
Which is the shortest time period over like any Star Wars movie, right? Like each Star Wars movie takes place over like several years.
Except for Rogue One. But I mean, that takes place over at least several days, if not like a handful of weeks.
But like you have The Empire Strikes Back, which takes place over like several months, if not years.
Yeah.
Force Awakens at least took place over like several weeks at least.
Right.
This movie, though, it went by so fast. Like, it was, it did not go by so fast. The time. This movie dragged and dragged and dragged, which is ironic because, again, it's the shortest time span of any of these movies, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the longest movie. That shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, like it felt like, oh, this movie takes place in 18 hours, so we're shooting it in real time. That's kind of what it felt like.
Exactly, and it shouldn't. It really shouldn't feel like a Shakespeare play.
Yeah, like a death clock drama shouldn't drag.
It's like when you're watching a movie and they're doing way too much and the clock's ticking too slow.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, you have 5 minutes. And then it's like 2 hours later, the time is still counting down. Yeah, it does feel like that. It's a little bit unbearable. It's a lot unbearable, actually, just from a pacing perspective.
If it was shorter, I think the movie wouldn't have as many flaws. They really should have taken it to the editing table, and sat with it for a bit. It should have sat there for a bit.
Yeah, and I blame that release schedule on that.
But I was trying to put my finger on why the pacing of this movie doesn't work, and I think you completely nailed it.
They're rushing it.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean what you were saying about the 18-hour window that doesn't feel like I think you put your finger directly on it.
Yeah, especially because the fact that characters, grow from having one power to having many powers without any sort of struggle or explanation why.
Other than the Force.
Yeah, and we saw the struggle that Luke had in The Empire Strikes Back just to do basic Force stuff. So the fact that somebody who's untrained in the Force can all of a sudden do all these crazy things, which was a problem that I had with The Force Awakens, but further exacerbated in this film. And surprisingly was sidelined for all this other stuff in the movie. Why isn't Rey essentially the main character of the movie? Is
it was
really weird. Exactly, but that's weird to me. And I mean, I get that they were paralleling, but like, why was Rey sidelined so much in this movie?
Like when she comes in that final fight scene, it really felt like, oh yeah, because she has to be there. It doesn't have to make just she has to be there. We kind of forgot she was in the movie, so let's just like haphazardly shove her there.
I want to know how Rey can take on that many skilled Jedi. Like, well, I don't even know what to call them.
The Knights of Ren?
Guards. Knights of Ren. Oh, is it confirmed that that's who they are? Because like they were pretending.
No, sorry. You're talking about the Imperial Guards, right?
Imperial Guards. Yes, thank you. So the Imperial. By the way, where were the Knights of Ren?
No, I would have liked that story to have been expanded on and not have to like read some book or like some expanded universe thing because they couldn't put it in.
And they even mentioned them in the movie. Like Luke talks about how he like escaped with the few that followed him, and
I actually think that we have to blame Rogue One on this because, well, I think that people who like did research realized that the Knights of Ren and the crew from Rogue One are way too like close to one another to actually have the Knights of Ren be a separate entity since everyone from Rogue One died.
Wait, the Knights of Ren. What do you mean? Like
if you look at the design, like the art book for the Force Awakens.
Oh, and you see the Knights of Ren and what they're wearing.
Not only what they're wearing, but also what they're named. They look and sound exactly like the crew from Rogue One, including the leader of the Knights of Ren is called the Rogue.
Oh.
It's that close where it's like they kind of just had to throw it away because it's too similar.
No, you can't throw it away since you've established it. Like, I don't care if like it's similar.
I don't either. You have that's my theory. That's my crackpot conspiracy theory.
I get that, but you have to deal with the plot elements that you've set up.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I agree, but
you can't retcon that.
Right. And now they're going to have to rely on tons of much better writers than the movie to work on this, because I will admit some of the books that I've read of Star Wars, turned amazing stories out of things that I couldn't think could do that.
Oh my gosh. Right? Have you read the one where Darth Sidious and Darth Vader are like on that one planet with the one, what are their names? Twi'leks?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that one's actually really good. It's set before the rebellion starts, like the resistance starts, and they like end up marooned on this planet in like the woods. And the whole time Darth Sidious is like teasing Darth Vader, like, come at me, bro. Because he thinks that this is like Darth Vader's chance to overcome him. And it's so good. I really recommend that one.
That sounds awesome.
I remember growing up, the one that everybody was like really fond of was Shadows of the Empire, because
which unfortunately is not involved in canon now. I don't think I think they took that one out of canon, which is like what I'm working through right now. That's like only stuff that's in the canon.
That's like one of the hardest things, because like, trying to figure out like what actually is the canon now, because there's a lot of retconning and then throwing out like previous books and all that kind of stuff. Like, I know that there were a lot of people who said that the Mandalorian Armor series, the Boba Fett series, was like really awesome about like, the stormtrooper who becomes a bounty hunter and all that kind of stuff. And I think what they're going to do with the Boba Fett movie is borrow elements from it, but like change it, since like you made Boba Fett a clone, and you have to deal with the fact that, everybody looks like Boba Fett, and like, how is the Mandalorian armor interesting when like
in the Clone Wars they do that. They'd show his transition into a bounty hunter, It's actually a really cool development. He works with Asajj Ventress for a while, but at like the age of 12 or whatever, Boba Fett is a leader of a bounty hunting group, and he like shaves his head and undergoes some like he undergoes through like a lot of shit, but he comes around, and like it's a really really interesting side to see him grow into that, and which makes, you know, watching the original trilogy so disappointing, because you're just like, oh, Boba Fett, oh no, he just like dies for no reason.
Yeah, except I think they actually declared official canon that he
Didn't die.
escaped the Sarlacc pit. That whole thing where he like blows up the Sarlacc pit like while he's inside and like fights his way out.
Yeah.
But that would be
That's
like
good.
really cool to see. I had heard rumors that he was going to appear in The Last Jedi, and I was kind of disappointed that he didn't. But like, part of me was like, well, you know,
It would have been too much.
yeah. And there were already a million storylines going. Just before we go away, I do have to say, what a wasted potential for
Phasma.
Gwendolyn Christie.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
sad.
Like,
I am too, but I will say I did get a little bit of a chill when you saw like just her eye.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
was that is like an example of doing something to sell toys that totally works for me. We're like, yeah, that's a cool variant because that plays into the character and the storyline, not just like, you know, stuffed animals.
But also,
But partly just because it was her, seeing her eye through the helmet, I was just like, oh my god, that's her!
because you've never seen her without her helmet, so like it makes it super important. And like her last look is at Finn, like it's very haunting. It's so haunting, and
that is such a good moment for such a wasted storyline.
yeah.
exactly. I'm still upset about it. I'm kind of hoping she somehow survived it, like Boba Fett apparently survived the Snarlack pet. So I doubt it, but I hope. That would be fantastic if she did. But yeah, Captain Phasma. That was I mentioned it in the beginning when I was talking about my relationship with Star Wars, and I was just like, you know, every movie has its flaw, and especially Star Wars is. It's like they have a knack for it. They have these awesome side characters that could be so badass, and then they squander the opportunity. And you know, what can you do?
Yeah.
It's just part of the series now.
And unfortunately, oftentimes it's female characters.
Yeah.
Like it seems to happen even more so with female characters. I mean, look at Amidala from The Phantom Menace to
Versus
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. She was just disrespected. That was
Yeah, because Queen Amidala is such an interesting character and like a really nice counterpoint to Princess Leia. But then just became, oh, she's a dead vessel for popping out babies. Great.
That's what she got boiled down to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the thing that Max Landis said, and the thing that we both Casey and I agree on, is like you could have done more interesting things with Rey's powers in The Force Awakens, but they relegated her to a Mary Sue. And then people got like so angry about that, like being like a sexist thing. And it's like, no, I'm talking about the character. You totally have this with guys too.
Definitely. Harry Potter.
Superman.
He's just so good at everything he tries.
I actually was going to say I didn't think about it until you pointed it out because I'm not really a fanatic for the Harry Potter franchise, but I think everything that people like in The Last Jedi has been done much better in Harry Potter. Like the whole
I would
the
agree.
chosen one thing is bullshit thing is done so much better with Harry and Neville, and the whole like, oh, this person who's been hailed as a hero for forever is actually doubting himself and is like kind of a crappy person has been done much more compellingly with Harry Potter's character of him turning into essentially Kylo Ren as like a whiny emo bitch boy for Order of the Phoenix.
Well, that's also
more
because
compelling to me, and that's more realistic to me than most of what was happening in this movie.
that's also because
but Harry was a teenager.
Rowling had like
Exactly. Like, it works. It makes perfect sense. It's kind of unbearable, but I think that it also kind of works in a way that I'm a little bit unwilling to admit, just because I don't actually like reading it. But I do think it works. I'm saying, like, it's not enjoyable to read, but I think it makes sense.
No, yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah. Well, Ren kind of gave me a weird look, like he was confused. But this movie was kind of a similar, like, unenjoyable to watch, but also logically doesn't work for me or make sense the way Harry Potter made it work.
Right.
Yeah, and like watching the movie, I was just like terrified because it was like, not only does this movie not work, but like this is changing Star Wars. And so like
Irrevocably.
Yeah, so like, I mean, how do you raise the stakes? Like how do you change things when like you've established that people can just communicate and touch each other, like
whenever.
Yeah. Or, show up in a battlefield and interact and fight people when they're not even there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And yes, it
takes away the risk.
It does. It really does. Like, for all the like risks taken to make this movie, it mostly just removes any kind of risk.
And
for the
I'm
character.
really worried about what they're going to do with Leia.
Yeah. Me too.
I wish they had just switched Leia and Holdo's character.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. Like, made that Leia sacrifice where she took the cruiser and went through Snoke's ship. Like, that would have been better, I guess.
Yeah, and the fact that they have officially said that they're not going to have her in the next movie, it's like, well, how is the story wrapped up?
It's not. It's just more sidelining Leia and more sidelining her and sidelining her again. It's frustrating.
So back to Hunger Games for a second and Mockingjay. I am blanking on his name right now, but it is an actor who recently passed away.
Oh, Paul Walker?
And he was in... Nope.
Oh.
What is his name? He was in Doubt and The Master and...
Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Thank you. I don't know why I was blanking. So anyways, Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away halfway through filming Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
What they did, they used stock footage for like a cut scene to him just to show that he was present. And then he had a letter read, like his character wrote a letter that had another character read it to Katniss. And so like that's how they explained why he wasn't there without like killing him off, because in the book he wasn't killed off. I don't want that to happen with Leia. She was so important in Last Jedi. When she wasn't being sidelined, it's like they should have gone and done reshoots. It sucks, but they should have gone and done reshoots and had her switch with Holdo. Is that her name?
Yeah, and just grabbed
was
a couple.
Not a good character by any stretch of the imagination. She really did not need to be there. I don't understand the reason of sidelining Leia to have another character essentially act the way that Leia probably would have acted, because when she came out of her coma, she was basically like, yep, that was the right thing to do. I don't know what passing the reins on and then putting them back did for the storyline.
It did nothing.
It really did nothing.
She didn't need to be sidelined. Why not put... I mean, like, why couldn't we have just focused on General Akbar? It was Akbar. Yeah. General Akbar. Like, his loss. That's serious.
Yeah.
He's been in all of the movies. Like, that was a serious loss. Why couldn't we just, like, kept it at that? But instead we had this new character come in just to be killed.
And have a moment.
It's like a red
at
shirt.
least.
Yeah, like, it was just no fanfare at all.
I mean, we got a bigger moment with Rose's sister than we did with Admiral Akbar.
Which was a good moment.
Admiral.
That was
I
a
am not
great
saying
moment.
take away that moment. Like, yeah, if you can have that, why can't you also have that with General Akbar?
Yeah. And I mean, he was present in the original trilogy. He had a huge role, huge role in Clone Wars. They had like a 3-episode arc around his home. So it's just like, he's such a great dude. I wish they would like done something with him.
But no, they just killed him immediately and then didn't have a moment for him, and now he's just gone for forever with no fanfare or interest.
I think he had one line in the movie.
Yeah. It's disappointing, but it was disappointing and disrespectful, but honestly, I think it was about as disappointing and disrespectful as most of the movie.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you so much for coming on, Haley. I think this was a really good discussion.
I'm glad I could come on and talk. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
Yeah, you were super awesome to talk to, and I sent Loren a message personally, but just thanks to Loren too, while he was able to be on the show, for being on and being a good counterpoint, because we fight, but I think it's important to have like not just people who completely agree with one another, but people who can actually talk about it and break it down and expand. And I think you and Loren both did a really good job with just really breaking down what you like and don't like, but also expanding on anything that Ren and I might have thought of too.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, definitely.
Not expanding on, but like saying other stuff that we wouldn't have thought of. That's what I meant.
Definitely. And I think Loren pointed out some things I didn't think about that made me appreciate the movie. You guys pointed out stuff that I didn't think about that made me not appreciate the movie. So I'm still on the fence about it, but I totally understand why people love and hate it. So
yeah, and I think you said a lot of really good points that I hadn't thought of either. So thank you so much for being on. Stay classy.
Yeah. Stay classy, San Diego.
Yeah, and definitely come back on sometime.
Yeah. I would love to.
Yeah.
We've been trying to bring on like a lot of different people with different viewpoints on different movies whenever we can, and it'd be great to get like more and more people on more often, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I think the dynamic of having more people, although that usually leads to like longer podcasts and everything like that, I think having different viewpoints like stuck and trying to like work out different arguments just makes a more compelling podcast than just two people who essentially agree with each other, which is oftentimes
all the time.
I can definitely talk about Marvel all day. So
awesome.
Anytime you guys want to like break down Thor Ragnarok or something, I got you.
Yes. Oh my God. Just okay. I will
Wait,
send
really?
you out.
Yeah.
That was my top 3 Marvel movie.
Yeah, it was.
I loved it. I loved it.
Oh.
Yeah, we loved
it. I was saying I will message you
Okay,
about how awesome the movie is, but especially Valkyrie.
Oh my God, she's so good. Yeah, definitely message me about it. We'll break it down.
For sure. No, Thor Ragnarok was awesome.
So just as like a plan, we should try to set up a time to discuss Black Panther, because I really am looking forward to that movie, and it would be great to have a discussion about it with like a hardcore Marvel fan.
Yeah, we should get you and another girl who's been on the podcast, Chanel, our discussion of Justice League. If like the four of us could all get in on this, that would be super cool.
Also, it's really cool to finally see a movie where the prominent actors are all people of color. Like,
yes.
Don't forget about the Tolkien white guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such a funny joke about the only 2 white guys on the poster are Bilbo Baggins and Gollum. They're the Tolkien white guys. It's too
That's actually really funny.
I can't.
I was shook the other day. I was watching Legends of Tomorrow, and they had an episode where they went back to talk to Tolkien, and they kept saying Tolkien, and I was like, what? That's not right. So I had to look it up. I'm like, oh my god, Tolkien actually went by Tolkien. I am.
Oh, really?
My life is over. My life is over. Yeah, the proper way to pronounce Tolkien is Tolkien. I refuse to, but that's what the internet says.
Well, that's kind of like the whole Neil Gaiman thing. It's like
Yeah.
Gaiman sounds cooler because it kind of sounds like diamond, and then the other one just is like, that's cool.
GIF. Yeah. So it's to each their own, I'm gonna say. Even though Tolkien wrote in a letter, it's pronounced Tolkien. I mean, I was crushed. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I didn't know how to cope with that.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, no, this has been great, guys. I will definitely be on for Black Panther, and I'll have some notes from my best friend. His favorite comic is Black Panther, so
Nice.
I'm sure he'll have some feedback.
If he can make it on the show, that'd be great too.
Definitely, if you guys want some Black perspective, he's got it for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's one thing, like with any of these podcasts, especially on nerdy stuff, like I want that one like nitpicker nerd that just like, actually it's this and you guys are totally wrong.
He did that to me to Iron Fist. I was like completely shitting on the show, and he was just like, well, actually, that's because I was saying Danny needed to be cast as an Asian American, and him, the person of color out of us two, was like, well, but in the comics he's white. I was like, okay.
Also Asian in the comics in some iterations.
No, that's Doctor Strange.
No,
Yeah, that's Doctor Strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Rand's always been white, but I feel like the story could have been updated and more relevant if he had been Asian American.
It could have been a passing of the torch, Why does it have to be Danny Rand? Why does Batman have to always be Bruce Wayne? That kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, we do have, and that's nice, but we do also have,
Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Which,
oh my god! Speaking of, did you guys see the new trailer for the animated Spider-Man movie?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things.
It's Miles Morales.
Yeah, I did know that. I'm super stoked.
I did hear some people complain at the fact that it's a multiverse movie, so he's
it is
relegated.
He's not the main, yeah.
Yeah, to just being like one of many different Spider-Men. Some people have,
but it's still exciting.
Yeah, exactly, and it looks really cool. I haven't seen a trailer yet, but I'm probably gonna watch it right after this.
I'm not gonna watch a trailer because I'm gonna watch the show.
Is it a show?
A movie. It's a movie.
Yeah, it is a movie. I didn't mean to say show, but
this is Marvel's first branch off really into like an animated movie.
Yeah. So since I'm definitely gonna see it and I don't need to be sold on it, I'm just gonna watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's nothing wrong with that.
But I avoided every single trailer possible.
I saw 2 in a TV spot.
Mm-hmm.
First one was intentional. Everything else was accident.
I with Last Jedi too, and I was super relieved, but also kind of mad at the trailers because there's one shot of Rey training that looks like she literally has no idea how the hell to fight with a stick. And it's super awful. And I was really relieved that in the movie it was only that one shot, and I think everything else she did worked really well.
It's her Conan moment.
But why do you have to have that one shot? And then also, why do you have to have that in all of your trailers? Because she's sort of like weirdly flailing with the stick in a way that doesn't work.
Okay, my one hope for this last film is for her lightsaber to be double-ended.
That would make sense.
Like double-sided. It makes sense because of her staff.
It would.
Now, can she find 2 kyber crystals? I don't know.
Well, I like that idea, but this is probably really stupid, and it might not be as good as I think it would be. But I would kind of dig it if like it was double-sided, but they were different colors.
Oh, I don't think it'll happen.
I don't think it'll happen either, but it would be kind of cool if it wasn't just like, oh, blue equals light side, red equals dark side, but she has like two conflicting colors.
What could happen is Ahsoka Tano. Okay, so Ahsoka Tano deals with, gosh, she's so perfect, and I really don't want to spoil this.
Then don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Just watch everything that you're talking about. Like, though, with Rey having two colors on her lightsaber is explained in like the Rebel show and then Clone Wars. I haven't even watched. Is it called Rebels? Just Rebels, Star Wars Rebels. Yeah.
Yeah.
She has a white lightsaber. She has a white lightsaber.
Cool.
It's white.
What I will say is, like, I was really hoping that this movie was going to show the making of a lightsaber, because that's something that all Jedi.
Destruction of a lightsaber, so that could happen in the next movie.
Right, but that could have been cool in this movie.
That's something they do in the show too.
Nice.
Ahsoka Tano, she takes her and Yoda take like a group of Jedi. What do they call them? Younglings. And they go to a cave and they all go pick out their kyber crystal. It's actually really cool. I didn't know that's how they constructed them. It's a pretty cool episode.
By the way,
I'm talking about Clone Wars so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Chanel is totally down to join us for Black Panther.
Awesome. That'll be wonderful. Once again, thank you so much for coming on. And
yeah, no problem, guys.
We look forward to having you again for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Alrighty.
For everyone else, thanks for listening.